Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to race day at the Circuit of Catalonia in Barcelona. And we are set for a very exciting, I think, Spanish Grand Prix for 2024. Qualifying yesterday was brilliant. We had such a close fight throughout the entire field for every position, basically. And as you'll see, as we go through the build-up to the Grand Prix, qualifying was so incredibly close on lap time through really not the entire field, but almost the entire field. It was incredible how close it was. And we do have a pretty exciting grid on our hands and battles throughout the field. Battle for the win, of course, between most likely Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Battle for the podium between Mercedes, Ferrari, maybe even Piastri as well, if he can make his way past the two Alpines quick enough. Obviously got Sergio Perez. We're going to be watching him come through the field. Maybe Alonso can, fight the two Alpines in the midfield. And of course, the midfield do tend to have quite a few battles during the race itself anyway. So, yeah, it should be a good race. Whether it'll be as good as what we saw in Montreal, I mean, probably not. But I think we are in for probably a good race today. And yeah, qualifying, I think, has set us up very nicely for the race today. And of course, this is the first race watch along that I have done, I think, in exactly 3 months. I think the Australian Grand Prix race day, I think, was like the 22nd or 23rd of March. Obviously, it's 23rd of June today. So, yeah, 3 months it's been since the last race watch along. And, I mean, most of the races we've had since then have been pretty mediocre, I would say. Obviously, the Canadian Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago, I would have been live for that if only my keyboard was working properly. But except for that Grand Prix, a lot of the races, this season have been, again, pretty boring. So let's hope it is a bit better than what we've seen most of the time in 2024. But for the next couple hours, we're going to be going through, what happened yesterday and the data from yesterday to give us a good idea as to what is probably going to happen today. And of course, I'll be building up in the best way I can over the next couple hours to the race itself. And then in just under 2 hours' time, we'll get into the race, which is a 66-lap Grand Prix. And without any safety cars, should be, an hour and 20 to an hour and 30-minute race. It will go by pretty quickly. It's, of course, pretty short lap. Unfortunately, I will not be joined today by my co-commentator Niblo because he is a bit too unwell to be on stream today. So hopefully he does get better. Because, soon enough, it would be great if we could do a race watch along together again. Maybe next week in Austria, maybe we could do. Depends obviously on what type of grid we get for the race, or maybe even Silverstone. We'll have to see how that all plays out next week and the week after. But yeah, it will just be me for today. But I think we are in for an exciting day, no doubt about that. So yeah, hopefully you guys can join me in enjoying today's Spanish Grand Prix. And no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, I hope you're all having as best a Sunday as possible. And don't forget, there is a poll running in the live chat where I've asked you guys, who do you think will win the Spanish Grand Prix? Will it be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and then I put other because maybe you think it'll be George Russell or Charles Leclerc or I don't know, Oscar Piastri. So, yeah, those are your options. Of course, I'll let you know my predictions soon enough going into this race. And, what we're going to get into now is usually what we get into in a race build-up, which is what happened yesterday and all of the data from yesterday. Of course, another thing I will make sure to do is go through tyre strategy today. Because, of course, at this Grand Prix, it is always very important is tyre strategy. So, yeah, let's get into the results of qualifying yesterday. And it was a very, very close top 10. Lando Norris, though, ended up taking his second ever Formula One pole position. Obviously, his first pole position was in Russia in 2021, and he did it by a couple hundredths of a second. And as we'll get onto in a moment, it was that middle sector, which is really why he got pole. It was just good enough and just strong enough compared to what Max did, that even though Max was mighty in that final sector, Lando could hold on and get the pole position. Lewis Hamilton ending up in third, George Russell in fourth. Mercedes, as we'll get into in a moment, in the first two sectors, they were pretty competitive, but it was just that final sector where they really lost quite a bit of lap time. But Mercedes were pretty competitive yesterday. They were just lacking the all-around package just to get the job done. They just didn't quite have as much as what McLaren had or what Red Bull had to, be on the front row or get pole position. But they were very close with them over the course of qualifying. And then you got Charles Leclerc in fifth, behind George Russell, of course, fourth. Carlos Sainz in sixth, and you can see only, 4 hundredths of a second separating third to sixth place. That is how incredibly close it was yesterday in Spain. And then you've got, very impressively, Pierre Gasly, seventh on the grid, only a tenth of a second away from the Ferraris and the Mercedes cars, and only 4.5 tenths off pole. How incredible is that? We're at, race 10 of the season. Of course, in Bahrain, Alpine were, 1.5, 2 seconds off the pace, and now 4.5 tenths off pole around a track that is all about aero. So it does show you that Alpine are heading in a very good direction and are looking like they could be real dark horses in the second half of this season. Sergio Perez ended up in 8th. He will start, though, from P11 because, of course, he got a 3-place grid penalty for, driving back to the pits in an unsafe condition in the Canadian Grand Prix. So Perez will start in P11, meaning that it will be Esteban Ocon 8th, so a 4th row lockout for the Alpine team. Oscar Piastri, of course, didn't do a proper lap time in Q3, so that's why it says no time there. He will start, though, in 9th, and then it will be Fernando Alonso, 10th on the grid, benefiting just about from Sergio Perez's penalty. One thing, though, obviously with Aston Martin, it was a poor session, 11th and 14th. One thing, though, with Aston Martin, which I think is true, and I'll just quickly look to confirm this, but I think with that lap time, you can see there, Aston Martin were 3/4 of a second away from pole position, which is not too bad considering they were 11th on the grid. But I think, let me have a look. Yeah, I think this might be true, that they are pretty much the same amount of lap time off of pole as they were at this track last year with their best car, which last year was Lance Stroll in qualifying. They are about the same gap behind, but instead of qualifying 6th, I think it was last year, they're 11th. So it just shows you that even though they haven't lost any lap time compared to who's on pole at this track, other teams have jumped ahead of them in that 7/10 of a second gap. So yeah, it's just quite incredible, that, to be honest. And then you got Valtteri Bottas in P12, Nico Hülkenberg 13th, Lance Stroll in 14th. And I have to say, it is remarkable how the top 14 separated by only 1 second. If you don't believe that, in Formula One right now, that the teams are very close on performance, then I have no idea what to tell you, because it has been a long time, since the top 14 has been separated by only 1 second. Imagine what it's going to be like at the Red Bull Ring next week, where, of course, it's an even shorter lap. It could be only half a second separating the top 10 or maybe even the top 15. You really never know. It is going to be incredibly close next week in qualifying. And then a big gap and a big drop back to Zhou Guanyu in 15th place. And then Magnussen will start in 16th, Tsunoda 17th, Ricciardo 18th. It was quite incredible just how bad Racing Bulls were yesterday. Alex Albon qualified 19th, Logan Sargent qualified 20th. Alex Albon will now be starting from the pit lane because he has changed, I think, his power unit. Or some of the power unit elements, which means he needs to start from the pit lane because, of course, it's after Parc Ferme. Logan Sargent was given, after qualifying, a 3-place grid penalty for blocking Lance Stroll, but he doesn't actually lose a position. He actually gains a position because of Alex Albon, his teammate, going into the pit lane. So Sargent will start 19th, and Alex Albon will start from P20. So that is your grid for the Spanish Grand Prix. So let's get into the sector time data just to understand why it ended up the way it did and to see where certain teams are, particularly quick. The sector 1, the least important sector, which is really about high-speed performance. Ferrari, no surprise, they were the quickest. Mercedes, though, also very quick. And as you'll see in the speed trap in a moment, Mercedes very competitive. So good to see their top speed and their slippiness, I guess you would call it, through the air is very good. And they're not anywhere near as draggy with their car as they used to be last year or the year before. So that is good to see. And it is something we have seen, a trend we have seen over the course of 2024. Red Bull, not too bad. McLaren, not too bad either. I mean, only half a tenth separating the top 4 teams. And then a bit of a drop back to Alpine, 0.2 of a second off the pace. Still pretty impressive, though, for Alpine, considering still they have the worst power unit on the grid, yet in Sector 1 were 5th best. Just shows you how, despite the lack of power, aerodynamically, that car is really, really good, in comparison to their midfield rivals. So just hope they can keep getting better because there's definitely, at the minute, at least something good there. Haas, competitive as well. Sauber, competitive. Not really surprised. Aston Martin, not very good in the first sector. Racing Bulls, would have expected more from them in this first sector. And also from Williams as well. But as we'll see in a moment, Williams' top speed also not very good down the straights. The middle sector, though, is the most important sector at this track, really because it's the longest sector of the track, and it also shows, truly, who has the best car for this circuit in an aerodynamic sense. And through qualifying, at least, McLaren clearly were that team. Lando Norris pretty much a 10.5 quicker than the next car, being Max Verstappen and the Red Bull. And that gap of 0.139 is why Lando Norris got pole, because Max was super quick in the final sector, but Lando was just so quick in sector 2 that that Max could not swap it back round enough in that final sector. And that McLaren car through the middle sector is very, very strong. Red Bull still strong to a certain extent. Mercedes, pretty good, pretty much level on the pace with Red Bull. Maybe you could ask a bit more from them compared to McLaren, also, Mercedes-powered team, but you have to accept that McLaren have got a very good car through the corners here. And then you've got Ferrari a bit further back, 4th best team, 0.2 off the pace, and Ferrari actually closer to Alpine than they are to Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren ahead. And with Ferrari, I would just like to make a point with them because I am concerned, very concerned with Ferrari going forward for the rest of the season and just in general right now. Because Ferrari, they brought a few new parts this weekend, a decently sized upgrade package. Of course, they brought one a few races ago at Imola. but they haven't got any better with those upgrades. They've not improved. You know, if we go back to the gap in qualifying, 3.5 tenths off pole, in practice, it looked like Ferrari and McLaren were on the same pace. But then when it came down to it, Ferrari were, quite a bit away. 3.5 tenths around, a short lap like this is for Ferrari, quite a bit of lap time. And if those upgrades were actually working, I think Ferrari would be maybe not on pole, but they would be right there in the fight with Norris and Verstappen, but they clearly weren't. And you would have to say, at the moment, from an aerodynamic sense, McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes are better than them. Mercedes have definitely, I would say, have surpassed Ferrari in terms of performance through the corners. And as we saw in the middle sector there, if we go back to it, Alpine, despite having a lot less power and straight line speed, through the corners, pretty much on the same pace. And that is a concern, because if Alpine keep this form up and keep getting better, then at certain tracks like this, where aero is very important, high aero tracks, maybe we could see Alpine legitimately fighting Ferrari, or, out qualifying Ferrari, say, when we get to, Singapore, Hungary, places like that. It is definitely a possibility. But in general, Ferrari, their upgrades have not worked. The upgrade package, again, that they brought this weekend hasn't worked. And the one they brought in Imola has not worked. Now, for the next Grand Prix in Austria, that won't affect them as much, because most of that track isn't really dependent on aero. The Red Bull Ring, it's more about, I'd say most of the track's more about mechanical grip and straight line speed. Yeah, but, with Silverstone around the corner, Hungary, obviously Spa, you've got plenty of important corners from an aerodynamic sense. Ferrari are going to be struggling compared to Red Bull, McLaren, and at the moment you would have to say Mercedes-Benz as well. So I am concerned with Ferrari. I am very concerned. And it's not, what happened in Canada is not really having an effect on why I'm thinking this, because Canada was a one-off. They just, for some reason, just had no grip. I think Ferrari know that was just a one-off type of Grand Prix. At least I hope it was a one-off. But this trend with the upgrades of them just not improving needs to stop, because if this continues throughout the season, my concern is that in the last few races of the year, Ferrari are going to be more of an upper midfield team than a front-running team, because that's the direction they're heading in. At the start of the season, they were clearly the second best team. Obviously won the Australian Grand Prix, third race in. And, they were pretty quick there all weekend. And now, fourth best team. And, again, closer to the upper midfield than they are to the very front. So, yeah, I am definitely concerned about what's going on there at Ferrari. And, of course, it's not good going into next season either. So, yeah, we'll keep our eyes on Ferrari, but like I said, because they're just not improving with their upgrades, I am definitely concerned at the moment with their performance, and I really hope they've got an upgrade in the pipeline that they'll actually be able to improve with, because if they don't, they'll just keep going backwards in a very similar way to Aston Martin, but just probably not as bad, because Ferrari's car fundamentally is better than the Aston Martin car. But yeah, with the middle sector, those are the top 5 teams, and then you got Aston Martin 6th, and yeah, you'd have to say Aston Martin 6th best team here in Spain. Sauber a bit better here than we've seen in recent races, which is good to see. Haas not that great, and then Williams and Racing Bulls quite far back. And I've got to say, it is incredible how bad Racing Bulls are in the middle sector and how bad they are around the track, because we observed in qualifying yesterday, Alex Albon I think, lifted through turn 9, which is a corner that normally is flat out for, most cars. So if he's having to do that, yet he's still quicker than the Racing Bulls cars, then that is a big concern for Racing Bulls as well. So yeah, we'll see. With the upgrades they've brought, we'll see whether maybe they just need more time to integrate them into the car and to get the best out of them, or whether they've got a serious issue there. We'll have to wait probably until Silverstone to fully understand if if this is becoming a proper issue for the Racing Bulls team. And then the final sector really is about the 2 high-speed corners, and Red Bull were super quick through there. Max Verstappen a 10th quicker than Lando Norris, but again, Norris did well enough to keep pole position. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, very impressed by his speed. 3rd best were Alpine in the final sector. And yeah, Alpine, if only they had a power unit that was on the same level as, say, what Red Bull have got, then Alpine, I think, here would probably be mixing it with Ferrari and Mercedes. But they obviously can't because they have a lack of power, which is still affecting them. But very impressed by their grip through the second and final sector. And then you've got Lewis Hamilton 4th. Mercedes definitely could have done better in this final sector, but would they have ended up on pole? Probably not, but they definitely could have made it a bit closer. Maybe, in qualifying, maybe a tenth and a half closer, but ultimately wouldn't have mattered. Still would have ended up in the same position. Ferrari, 5th best in the final sector. And then Sauber 6th, Aston Martin 7th, Haas 8th, and then a big drop back on lap time to Racing Bulls and Williams, 9th and 10th. But in qualifying, I would say that McLaren, I think, just about had the best car in qualifying yesterday. And I think the middle sector and the middle sector speed from McLaren that we saw in practice as well was very impressive. I think that's what decided it in the end. And yeah, I think McLaren just about had the better car compared to Red Bull in qualifying. Of course, it is going to be different today, though, because Red Bull always stronger in a race situation than they are in qualifying. So yeah, McLaren were definitely, I think, quickest. Red Bull 2nd. And then you'd have to say Mercedes 3rd best, Ferrari 4th best, Alpine 5th, Aston Martin 6th. And then Sauber 7th, Haas 8th, Racing Bulls probably 9th, and then Williams in P10. I'd say that was probably the pecking order from qualifying. And I think in the race today, that will pretty much remain the same, except for the front 2 teams. But before we get into the long run pace from Friday, which does give us a really good indication as to what the pace will be like from the teams today at the track, let's just look at the top speeds. These top speeds, by the way, are from the speed trap located at the end of the pit straight, which of course is the highest speed part of the track. And as you can see, Mercedes, very good top speed, the best of any team, just about ahead of Haas and about a kilometre an hour quicker than Red Bull. So the Mercedes, very efficient in a straight line, and also quite a bit of grip, which I think definitely will help them next week at the Red Bull Ring. But yeah, Red Bull, pretty quick. Racing Bulls' top speed's pretty good. Ferrari's is okay. I think they've probably put on a tad more downforce than they usually do to try and, be a bit quicker through the corners, which maybe has closed the gap to Mercedes in their little fight with them, but hasn't really helped that much. Sauber's top speed is not too bad. Aston Martin's is okay. McLaren's is as expected, really. We know McLaren don't have a good top speed, and as you can see there, 3 kilometers an hour, Red Bull are quicker down the straights than McLaren. And if Max is within a second of Lando down that pit straight, you've got obviously the DRS advantage, which is, what is it, an extra, is it 10 kilometers an hour, I think? plus, the 3 kilometers an hour, that's an extra 13 kilometers an hour down the pit straight. So if Max gets close enough to Lando out of that final corner, Max is going to be able to have a go, because that Red Bull car, we know, is definitely quite a bit faster in a straight line than the McLaren. Williams, surprising they're, that far down, but they do have a bit more of a draggier car, I would say, this year. So it's not really as big of a surprise with them. And then Alpine, you can see quite clearly the slowest in a straight line down that pit straight. Yet again, in the first sector, they were the 5th best team. So again, it just shows you through the corners that car has been mighty, especially in qualifying trim. So yeah, well done to Alpine for having such a good car through the corners. So watch out for Mercedes, Haas, Red Bull, Racing Bulls, and in general the Ferrari powered teams, who always are pretty quick down the straights. But let's get into the long runs from practice 2 on Friday, because again, they do give us a good indication as to who is quick with their pace on heavy fuel and who isn't. And for some of the teams, I do have information on what tyre they did their long run on. Not for all the teams, for about 6 of the teams, I do have information like that. So let's get into it. Of course, these lap times are the average lap times that the teams and drivers did on their long run. So the best long run was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, a 119.7. And he did that on the medium compound tyre, which should be the tyre of choice today, at least to start the race on. So, yeah, very good-looking pace there from the Red Bull. Oscar Piastri was the quickest McLaren driver in the long run, and he did, on average, a 120.0, but that was done on the soft compound tyre. Now, if you were to change that tyre to the medium, I think Oscar probably would have lapped, maybe a 10th or 2 away from Max on average, probably a 10th of a second away from Max on average. So with Red Bull and McLaren both on the same tyre, I think you're looking at them maybe having the exact same pace over the course of the race today. But Red Bull, I do think, because we know on a Friday they are, not quite as strong, I do think Red Bull will have just a slight advantage over McLaren with the race pace today. Not by much, I think probably about a 10th of a second per lap in clean air. But, if Max can stick behind Lando within a second, of course, DRS enabled after only 1 lap. So if Max can stick behind Lando, get that DRS, and keep himself there's no reason why Max can't take the lead in the first, 20 laps. And there's no reason why he can't, maybe get ahead in the pit stop phase during the race as well. So, yeah, I think Red Bull are the favourites for today, but McLaren, I think, definitely have a good chance of victory today. All depends, though, on obviously the start and how McLaren are able to keep Max just a bit too far away from them and not allow Red Bull to, undercut them or, pass them on track down the pit straight, where McLaren can be a bit vulnerable, I think, today. And then you've got Mercedes and Ferrari doing the same pace, a 120.2 on average. But again, like McLaren, Mercedes and Ferrari did their best time, or they did their average time on the soft compound tyres. So definitely, compared to Red Bull, can go quicker. Alpine, their average time was a 121.1. They did their long run on the medium compound tyre. So, and they've got the same pace by the looks of it as Sauber. Don't know what tyre Sauber are on, so I can't give you that information, unfortunately. But Sauber's race pace looking good. But Alpine, you would expect to be best of the rest in the race today. Haas, 7th best. Pretty impressive from them. Then Aston Martin, only 8th best with their pace. really not good and almost 2 seconds off the pace of the Red Bull and Max Verstappen on average. And Alonso did his run on the medium compound tyre like Max did. So yeah, Aston Martin, I think, are in quite a bit of trouble. And I think if Alonso is going to finish in the points, he's going to have to get a bit lucky today, because I don't think Aston Martin have genuinely got the pace to be able to do it. And then just behind, Williams, bit better race pace than qualifying pace, which is good to see. And then Racing Bulls, I had no idea whether that far off. Their average time was a 1:22.0. The only team doing a 1:22. So yeah, no idea why they were so slow. But this is how the race pace is looking, and it's not really a surprise, I would say, in terms of how it's looking, coming through the weekend. Red Bull, like I said, I think are the favourites, but I don't think they are the clear favourites. I think it's more 60-40 or 65-35 in Red Bull's favour, in terms of who the favourite for the race is today. But like I said, I still think Max and Red Bull have got to be favourites, because in a race situation, they do have the best car. And of course, Max in a race situation is even stronger than he is in qualifying. And he was pretty strong yesterday, was Max in qualifying. So after all that data, let me get on to my race prediction for today's Spanish Grand Prix. Make sure to give me yours in the live chat, and I'll make sure to get to yours before the start of the Grand Prix. And of course, make sure to keep voting in that poll at the top of the live chat, and I'll get to the results of that right before we get into the race itself. By the way, we're on 23 likes. Let's try and get up to 30 plus likes if we can in the next few minutes. That'd be great if we could do so. So yeah, let's go on to the predictions of mine for the race and my top 10 prediction. And of course, as usual, I've done the gaps that I think it'll be through the top 10. And Max Verstappen, I think, will win the Spanish Grand Prix by about 7 seconds, which around a track like this is not that much amount of time. But I think Max will overtake Lando Norris in the race today. Not, in the first 5 laps or anything, but I think either right before the pit stop phase or in the few laps after Max and Lando have pitted. Maybe Max, goes a few laps longer to have fresher tyres, something like that. Or maybe Max, goes for an undercut and then gets it done on track, something like that. I think probably between lap 20 and 30, we'll see Max Verstappen overtake Lando Norris. And then in clear air, Max should just gradually pull away and build a lead that eventually I think will end up at about 7 seconds. Lewis Hamilton, I think, will finish in third, half a minute off the race win. I don't think Mercedes are going to have the pace to be able to hang on to Norris and Verstappen. I really hope I'm wrong, though, because, of course, their race pace in Canada was, at times, pretty decent. But I think Red Bull and McLaren, when it comes to pure race pace, I think are the two best teams out there for that. Mercedes, I'm going third and fourth. Leclerc fifth, Carlos Sainz in sixth for the two Ferraris. But even though I've gone for, the same result for the race as it is for qualifying for those teams, I do think Leclerc will get ahead of Russell at the start. So I do think Russell will have to repass Leclerc at some point during the Grand Prix, which is why it will remain relatively close between those teams in the fight for the podium. Oscar Piastri, I think, will finish in P7, not too far behind that little fight. Sergio Perez, I'm going in 8th, and then a lap down, the two Alpines of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. So let me know in the live chat, guys. Do you agree? Disagree? Give me your top 5 or top 10, whatever. I don't mind. And again, that poll is running at the top of the live chat. So make sure to let me know who you think at least is going to win the Spanish Grand Prix today of 2024. But let me just quickly go back to my main screen and get the timer back up, as we have got an hour and 25 minutes to go until lights out in Spain. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. Of course, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Obviously, we'll be doing F1 content throughout the year. One thing I can confirm, if you don't know already, I did say this yesterday, I will 100%, as long as there's no issues, technical issues, I will 100% be live for qualifying next week in Austria. So that's next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. UK time. I will be live to cover qualifying at the Red Bull Ring for the Austrian Grand Prix. The reason I can confirm that is because I can already tell right now, qualifying next Saturday is going to be so unbelievably close and exciting. So, yeah, I just have to be live for that. And, of course, if we get an exciting grid, then I'll probably be live for the race. But we'll see if we do get that. But one more thing that I want to get onto. Yeah, one more thing that I want to get onto before I come to your comments in the chat is tyre strategy for today, because of course that is very important. So let me just see what Pirelli is saying for that. And the tyre compounds, by the way, which I don't think I've said yet this weekend. The three compounds are the C3, C2, and C1. So pretty much the three hardest compounds have been brought to this track, which is no surprise given how hard the tyres are worn here. But according to Pirelli, the fastest strategy for today is a two-stop strategy. And there are three different two-stop strategies you could do, according to Pirelli. So let's go through them. The first one is starting on the soft compound tyre, pitting between lap 15 and 21, then going on to the medium, and then pitting again between lap 41 and 47, and then finishing the race on a soft tyre. The other one is pitting between lap 13 and 19, then going onto the hard compound tyre, and then pit again between lap 42 and 48, and then finish the race on a soft compound tyre. And then the third two-stop option is pit between lap 13 and 19 again, go on to the hard compound tyre, but stop a bit sooner between lap 38 and 44, and then finish the race on a set of mediums. And then there is the option of a three-stop strategy, which is pit between lap 12 and 18, go on to the medium, and then pit again between lap 29 and 35, and then go on to a set of soft tyres, and then pit for the final time between lap 46 and 52. I think it'll be a two-stop race today. It pretty much was last year. And I think, if they start on the soft tyre, I am still a bit surprised by that. But we have to remember, again, the soft compound tyre here in Spain is quite a bit harder than the soft compound tyre normally is for, other Grand Prix. So if they do start on the soft compound tyre, there's no way they will go longer than, say, lap 25 on that compound. For Max and Lando, they'll want to try and go at least 20 laps on that tyre to try and build enough of a gap to drop into a clear bit of space on the track, say between, I don't know, Piastri and the Alpines, or Perez and the Alpines, because obviously Alpine are in the midfield, and Piastri and Perez, are going to be making their way up into that front group. So yeah, I think, like I said, Max and Lando probably will pit between lap 20 and 23 for the first time, and then we'll see what happens after that, whether the drivers go onto a set of hard tyres, mediums, or another set of soft compound tires. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see the teams going soft, medium, medium, or soft, hard, medium, or soft, hard, hard. Wouldn't be surprised by that at all. But yeah, it's going to be interesting when it comes to strategy. And of course, if it is close between Verstappen and Norris, if they're only separated by a second or so in the first 20 laps, it's going to come down if if Max can't pass Lando or Lando can't pass Max, it's going to come down to tyre strategy in the pit crews. So it is going to be very important today. And we will touch on more so later in this build-up, maybe what certain teams could do to try and improve on their grid position, or, try and get a better result than what they are currently heading for. Because I think definitely with this team on the screen, Mercedes, I think if Ferrari are not giving them too much pressure from behind, and they're not that far behind Norris and Verstappen, only a few seconds, then maybe Mercedes could go a bit longer into the race, have fresher tyres, and maybe come back at Norris and Verstappen that way. So, yeah, we will see. But I think what we'll do for the next, say, 45 minutes is go through your comments in the chat. So keep them coming, guys, for the next 45 minutes or so, or hour or so. And, of course, I'll get to as many as I can. Yeah, make sure to get them all posted. Astro, good to see you in the chat, mate. Saying, being realistic, probably Max, but I hope it's Sainz first, then Piastri second, Hamilton third, Leclerc fourth, Russell fifth. It would be, well, the chances of that happening is, 1 in a million, I think, Sainz winning and then Piastri second, because obviously Sainz is just way too far back on the grid in sixth. And obviously Oscar in P9. And we have to remember, even though these cars can follow better, and you have DRS after only one lap, it is still hard to overtake at this track. So I'm not expecting 100 overtakes today or anything like that. And Astro also commenting and asking, do you really think Alpine have improved that much, Chazza? Yes, I do. I think at the start of the season, I think they probably had a decent car aerodynamically, but they couldn't really show it because, one, again, underpowered, and the tracks we were at the start of the season were more so power circuits. Bahrain, the Jeddah circuit, you need a lot of power around because of how high speed it is. And also, they were quite overweight, were Alpine at that point of the season. But I think by now, Alpine should be, pretty much where maybe they were with their weight last season. So I think that issue is solved. Maybe not entirely, but mostly solved. Of course, there's nothing they can do about the, being underpowered, because the engine development is frozen until the start of 2026. So, yeah. I think they have improved quite a bit. I think they've had, some upgrades which definitely have improved the car through the corners, but I think definitely as they've took the weight off, I think that's really shown, that's why they're showing the improvement. And as I've said, I think with how they've performed here at a track where, if you are that good with your car around a track like this, it's a very good omen going forward for the rest of the season, because maybe, you don't have the best straight line speed, but through the corners, you've got a good car. So that's why I say, for the second half of the season, I think they're a dark horse from that midfield pack because they are getting better all the time. There's probably another big upgrade coming soon. And we have to remember, for the second half of the season, they're going to have a bit more time to work in the wind tunnel than they did in the first half of the season because, of course, they're lower in the championship than they were at the end of last season. And, of course, the end of last season determines, for the first half of this year, the amount of time you're allowed in the wind tunnel. So, yeah, look out for Alpine in the second half of this year. V for Visuals says, I want to bet on Perez crash. Downfall is real. I wouldn't bet on that, but yeah, Perez has been diabolical as of late. I mean, what was it? In Monaco, obviously crashed out in the first lap. Canada never went anywhere from, 16th on the grid, 17th on the grid, something like that. Never went anywhere, and then crashed. And then Imola, he finished in 8th place, but was pretty slow in that race compared to his teammate. And at one point, Perez, I think, was nearly a lap down on his teammate. So, yeah. Since Imola, Perez has been unbelievably shit. Astra says Perez is an embarrassment, needs to retire. Well, that's the thing with Perez, is obviously signed on for next year at Red Bull. I think it's just got to the point where he's super comfortable and knows that even if he performs terribly, it doesn't matter because he's a Red Bull driver for next season. And I think them signing Perez to stay at the team for next season has nothing to do with Perez's performance. It's purely to appease Max Verstappen because, of course, there are still strong rumors that Max Verstappen might jump ship and go to Mercedes, which is a possibility, it looks like at the moment. So I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to appease Max, because I think if they had put Carlos Sainz in the car, then I think that'd be a clear sign that they are planning for life without Max Verstappen. But Red Bull, and no surprise, they are desperate to keep Max Verstappen because, of course, they've lost Adrian Newey and they cannot afford to lose the second big piece of the puzzle. Robert Perkle says ego levels will be in play. Max will chase Norris like a mean cat after a mouse. Max other choice is to take lead first corner and not look back. Well, of course, Max, he does have previous when it comes to taking the lead into the first corner. 2021, he did a very aggressive dive on Lewis Hamilton that just about ended without contact. Obviously didn't go on to win because Red Bull didn't have the pace to win that particular Grand Prix. But, I mean, yeah, if Max has the opportunity to do that, then why not go for it? But, if Lando does maintain the lead at the end of lap 1, what Max needs to do is just make sure he is within Lando's DRS window, under a second. Keep getting the DRS and just, if he can't overtake, then just manage the tyres and just try and sit there and wait until either, Lando makes a mistake or, when we get to the pit stop phase where Max can, maybe go for the undercut or maybe go one lap longer for the overcut and get the, job done that way. So, yeah, we'll see what way of going about it Max decides to do. But one thing with Lando that I hope we don't see today is him not defending as hard for his position as as he could, because we have seen in other races where Lando maybe could have defended harder, his position. I remember, was it America last season where he was leading for most of the race and then Max, made the move and Lando just didn't defend it. I mean, maybe you could say that Lando was never going to hold him back. That's true, but he still could have put up a bit of a sterner defense than that. So I'm just hoping with Lando that he's not too kind. And, if Max goes for the inside, he's not just going to let Max have the corner. And, well, we'll at least try and cover off the inside of the corner. Because, with how the McLaren car is performing right now, and there is probably a big upgrade coming in the next, 2 or 3 weeks for McLaren. If that big upgrade works, McLaren could be in a position where they've got, the fastest car on the grid and could really start to get after Red Bull in the championship. So, when it comes to today, if McLaren have got that upgrade in the pipeline and they know that they're pretty soon going to have the fastest car on the grid, then, Lando has got to win the race today because, of course, Lando is 63 points behind Max in the championship. And if he's going to put up a fight for the championship, then really, Lando has to win the race today. But if he doesn't, then I think that's absolute confirmation at that point that Max is not going to be, not going to have any contenders for the championship, because I think he'll be a bit too far ahead at that point of, Leclerc and Norris if he wins today. So it is a big day for McLaren, not just, to win the race, but to possibly get underway a bid for the championship. Remember, McLaren, their last driver's title was 16 years ago. Their last constructor's title was the year I was born. That's how long ago it was. 26 years ago. That is the last time McLaren won the constructors' championship. So, eventually they want to break that drought, let's say. But let's go through some other comments here. V for Visual says, we'll see how Lando deals with pressure. We will. Let's see if I can find some other good comments here. Francisco, good to see you, mate, says, hope to see Sainz and Leclerc can make the podium, at least one of the two. I think it's unrealistic, unfortunately. I think if Leclerc or Sainz had qualified in, say, third place, which, I mean, was possible, they weren't that far away from it, then I think maybe they could have hung on today for a podium, but starting on the third row of the grid with the race pace they've got, I just don't think it's possible and that realistic. I mean, they're in the fight. It's not impossible, but most likely Mercedes will be on the podium today, and I think most people would would agree with that. But let's find some more comments here if I can. Is Alonso podium possible? No way. No way. He'll do well to finish in the points, honestly, because Aston Martin are pretty slow. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Jamie Todd asks, does the grid fear Lewis Hamilton anymore? I don't think the other top drivers do because he's not at his best anymore. So yeah, I don't think drivers like Norris and you know Russell, Leclerc, the younger drivers. I don't think they fear Lewis Hamilton because again, it's not the absolute peak Lewis Hamilton that we are seeing. But I think there's probably still midfield drivers who probably still do, but the ones that are competing against him week in week out, I don't think really will be in fear of him. But one thing I will say is even the top drivers will be mindful that Lewis is still capable of showing his best. He's not completely washed up or anything like that. As the sun is out at the track, which is good to see. It's been a much better weather day at the track, the Circuit of Catalonia. It's been a much better weather day than forecast. There was rain forecast for the morning, and I think we had the odd shower, but it never really made the track wet for the support races. And now the sun's come out, so yeah, should be a bone dry and maybe even hot race in Spain. As we've got just over an hour to go until we're underway. Mr. Young Hegelian says Perez and Piastri really letting their teams down. I wouldn't say Piastri was necessarily. I mean, he's been slow all weekend. And Lando was always going to be the number one guy for for McLaren this weekend. Perez, though, a lot more so because, and as people have been saying recently, with Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren, getting up to the similar-ish level of performance with Red Bull, they need Perez in there as the number two driver to help Max because it's, Max versus everyone. And, Max is still, coming out on top, obviously one in Canada, one at Imola, but it makes things a bit harder when, teams like McLaren or Ferrari and Mercedes can use their two drivers against the one Red Bull driver of Verstappen. Good morning, by the way, to Silverback. And greetings to Buffalo, who is in Cape Town. Josiah says Ferrari are going to be in the mud in Budapest. Absolutely. At this rate, with, again, their upgrades not making the car better, if that continues, then yeah, in Hungary, they won't be on the in the top 5. They probably won't even be in the top 6 on the grid. They'll be fourth row, probably at best, I would say, at this rate, because both well, Sergio Perez, they can always rely on him to be poor, so maybe they can sneak onto the third row of the grid in 6th place. But Max and then the two McLaren and Mercedes drivers, always very quick at that circuit and in better machinery. So yeah, Ferrari, like I said earlier, they are starting to really worry me because they are really starting to drop back now. And again, it's because of an issue we have seen from them for 15 years now, where they start the season off well, or they start the season off performing at their best during the season, and then get worse as the season goes on because the upgrades they put on just don't work. Let me just have a quick cough a second. Say Regara says, do you think Alonso can score points this race? I mean, if he performs at his absolute best, then maybe he can, but Alpine are simply quicker than Aston Martin, so it's going to be hard, especially with Gasly and Ocon performing well. Astro says, cars are too reliable these days. Less reliability would make things much more interesting. I do not agree with that. I do, see the point of, well, if there was more unreliability, we'd get, more probably midfield teams on the podium, maybe a surprise winner here and there. But I don't think that less reliability makes for better racing. And I think that's probably my only big issue with, races back in the 80s, the 90s, and even the early 2000s is, there's some great races in there, but there could have been some really great other races, but was let down by, only 7 or 8 cars finishing. The more cars in a race, the more exciting, really, theoretically, it should be. K. Peter says, is Verstappen making Newey look like a genius? Yes and no, I would say. I think most of the time, Max just needs to put in like a above average performance in that car, and it's still, good enough for him to, get poles, win races. But, there has been in the last couple years some races where Max has been, even though the car's been very quick, Max has been even further ahead than really, should be possible. A good example of that is Hungary last year, where Max won the race from Lando Norris and I think finished 34 seconds ahead. That wasn't just the car. That was, I'd say, probably half of that was Max just being on a completely different planet to everybody else. And the tosser says, Ricardo hoping new Borat look will help keep his seat for 2025. Oh dear. Well, with Ricardo, I mean, we have seen a bit of a better performance from him in the last, few weeks. Obviously, in Canada, qualified 5th, only a tenth and a half off pole, and then finished the race in 8th place. So, a very good weekend from Ricardo. Did the best he could, which is all you ask from Daniel. Obviously Miami had a very good sprint race there, had a good weekend in Shanghai. So, he's getting better, but he's still not consistent, I would say, with it in 2024. But he's getting better, no doubt about that. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Viva Visual says, maybe Max is just getting everything out of the Red Bull and Perez is showing its real pace. Well, what you said there is basically the same thing. If Perez was showing the car's real pace, then he would also be getting the most out of the car. Perez is not getting the most he can out of that car. No way. Absolutely no way. I mean, it has been said before, and it is true, that, the car is set up more to favour Max than it is Checo, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because Max is the better driver. So, why wouldn't you set the car up to favour him more? But, and again, it's been said before on, Sky F1 and other F1 publications that Max, has a very particular driving style, and he likes his cars to be very pointy because of how aggressive he is with, just throwing the car about. And I don't think that suits Perez. I think Perez prefers a car that is a bit more understeery, which, if you remember, in the first, say, half of 2022, where Perez was here and there out qualifying Max and lapping at about the same speed as Max at times, that was because in the first half of that year, that Red Bull car wasn't quite to Max's liking, and it was a bit more understeery, let's say. So I think that's really the main core of the issue. I mean, Perez, I think, still could do better, but I think that's, again, the main core of the issue is setup, and Perez just can't drive as well as he possibly can with the setup the way it is. I think, if Max wasn't in that car and Perez was the number one driver, and set the car up to favour Perez, I think you would see Perez quite a bit quicker than, he normally is. But if you did that and, Max was in the car, altered the setup to favour Perez, Max, I think, would still be ahead of Perez, but Max would not be at his strongest if you did that. So, it's a catch-22. You either weaken your best driver or, favour your best driver, but weaken quite a bit your second driver when it comes to the, setup choice. So that's the way it is, unfortunately. And, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Red Bull favouring Max over Perez. Max is much better than Perez. That's the, clear fact at the end of the day. um, Visual says, like Alpin said, sharper and sharper, and Max gets faster and faster. Exactly. All of Max's teammates since Ricciardo left the team have struggled with that, the way that Max likes the car to handle, because it is quite unique. Astro says, I wonder if having COVID affected Lewis and Ricciardo more than they let on. I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think they would have publicized, I think, that by now, if they believed that was the issue behind their lack of pace. But I don't think that's the issue. And Astro also saying, remember that Danny Rick outpaced and outqualified Max on occasion when they were together, before Red Bull gave them their cursed car 2018. Yeah, that is true, but most of the time Max was the better driver in terms of speed. Let me see if there's any other comments here I can find. Robert Perkle says, Remember, F1 is playing fuel consumption game. That is stupid for the meanest racing on the planet. Turn them loose, and then we will see who turns the power up. I mean, yeah, it'd be great if we went back to, how it used to be, where the teams and the drivers were pushing the cars to the limit, literally, every single lap, like they were in the refueling days. But that's just not the way Formula One is at the moment. And we have to remember, even though the refueling era, yeah, it was exciting from that aspect that, the teams and drivers were pushing to the limit every single lap. People like to glamorize, the 80s and the early 90s when we had, Senna, Prost, Mansell, PK, all these drivers. But back in their era, there was no refueling like there is now. And they had to do a lot of the same that, the drivers today do. Look after tyres. And actually back then had to do a lot more conserving, because they had to look after the car. Because back then there was no guarantee whatsoever that you would get to the end of the race. So that is one part of the 80s and, again, the early 90s before refueling came back in that I don't like. Like revisionist history. People like to pretend that those eras were, free of, the teams weren't, managing the car and everyone was just pushing hell for leather. That is not true. That is not true. Again, the teams back then were probably managing more now, back then, than they are now. Because now, all they do in terms of management is, maybe a bit of fuel saving and, looking after the tyres. But again, back then, you would have to look after the entire car, fuel save, tyre save. And sometimes, because back then you could go the entire race without pitting, sometimes you had to look after your tyres even more so back then, because there was the possibility that your team would decide to go the whole race without pitting. So, yeah. As we've got, just over 45 minutes to go. And, yeah, we're on, 39 likes? Let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can by the start of the race. That'd be great if we could do that. But, yeah, probably for another 20 minutes, I'll read out some more comments and then we'll get back onto the teams. And I'll do a quick round of other teams before the race, and also get into, like I said, tyre strategy, because I think certain teams could try maybe some different things today. San Marino 1985, the race where F1 ran out of fuel. Yep. I think it was like 4 or 5 different cars. I think that was won by Elio De Angelis, I think, in the Lotus. Let me look. Yes, it was. And he, won the race. Thierry Boutsen finished second in the BMW-powered Arrows. But Thierry Boutsen ran out of fuel. And then, Tombe in the Renault third, Lauda fourth in the McLaren, and then Mansell in the Williams ran out of fuel. Stefan Johansson ran out of fuel in the Ferrari. Senna ran out of fuel in the Lotus. PK in the Brabham ran out of fuel. Martin Brundle in the Tyrrell ran out of fuel. And that was all in the last, 4 or 5 laps? Yeah, and a shame that that was Elio De Angelis' last win, because he was a very underrated driver. Not talked about enough is Elio. He was, very good driver. And finished third in the championship in 1984 behind the two McLarens of Prost and Lauda. And then in 1985, in the Lotus, was Senna's teammate and finished fifth. And then he went to Brabham in 86 and, of course, died soon into the season. But, yeah, he only finished, 5 points behind Senna? But to be fair, Senna did have quite a few more retirements. But still, Elio was a pretty competitive teammate. So yeah, a shame. Jamie Todd, do you see Hamilton winning another race in his career? That is difficult to say. Because obviously, depends a lot on the car he's driving. But, obviously depends as well on, certain weekends where he is at his best sometimes are not the weekends where there is actually a chance for him to win. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say no. I don't think he will win another race. I think that will shock people, but I don't think he will win another race. I mean, Mercedes this season, there's no guarantee they're going to win a race because you've got obviously Red Bull and McLaren who are super strong right now. Ferrari, still at certain tracks, are going to be able to fight at the top as well. I think Mercedes are still going to need quite a bit of improvement if they are going to have a legit chance to win races this year. So, and then obviously next year with Ferrari, I mean, who knows where Ferrari will be. But yeah, I'm going to say no. Viva Visual says, yeah, I remember, but I remember Schumi era 2 pit stops was very common. No. Yeah, in the in the years where Michael was at his most dominant, yeah, we would see 2 pit stops, and then later in say 2004, we were regularly getting 3 pit stops a race. And in terms of again the teams and drivers pushing to the absolute max, that was all great and everything, but we're in a different era. So yeah, I think there are certain things about the past which, yeah, it would be great if we had it again. But I think there are certain things about the past that people just need to let go of. Refueling being one of them, and the era of just pushing to the limit all the time in the race. We're never going to see that again. It's never going to happen. So I think people really have to try and let that go. Astra says, hopefully, you having said that, he'll win tonight, Chaz. That would be, yeah, a perfect commentator's curse if he was able to win today, which, it's not impossible, but I just don't think Mercedes will quite have the pace to do it. Visual says, do you think he'll outperform Charles? I think Lewis will dominate Charles. No, I think Leclerc. I'm not saying Leclerc's gonna destroy him, but I do think Leclerc will be better than Hamilton because 2 reasons. Well, yeah, but probably 3 reasons overall why I think that. 1, Leclerc is Ferrari's boy. He's their guy. Even though Lewis is coming into the team, which I know the team are excited about, Leclerc, again, he's their boy. he's their number one, so he's got that key advantage, I think, with the team going into next year and the year after. And also, he's got already, good relationships within the team, and is more used to how things are done at Ferrari. And you've got to remember with Lewis, he's been at the same team for 11 years. This is the first time Lewis is leaving Mercedes, um, or leaving, or, joining another team since the end of 2012, when he was a completely different person to what he is now. So, maybe he just won't get used to how things are at Ferrari. Of course, Ferrari, Mercedes, they do things differently. Maybe that will fuck up Lewis Hamilton a bit. That will have to be part of his learning process. But like I said, Leclerc, he's their guy. And also, if we look at right now, who is performing better, Leclerc and Hamilton, you would have to say Charles Leclerc this season has performed better than Lewis Hamilton. And overall, since the end of 2021, Leclerc has been more times than not, I think, better than Lewis Hamilton. So, yeah, that's why I think Leclerc will beat Hamilton. Again, it's not going to destroy Hamilton. It's not going to be like Rosberg and Schumacher when they were at Mercedes or anything. I don't think it's going to be that dominant, but I think most of the time, Leclerc is going to be the favourite to be, the number one at Ferrari. And we have to, accept whether, you're a Lewis Hamilton fan or not. This current version of Lewis Hamilton is probably the worst version of Lewis Hamilton we've ever seen. He's not been consistently outperformed by a teammate like this ever. I know people may say, oh, well, Jenson Button in 2011. Even though Jenson beat him in the championship, there were still plenty of qualifying sessions where Lewis was, comfortably quicker than Button. So even that season, it wasn't comfortable for Jenson because Lewis still had, an incredible raw speed. But that isn't there as much for Lewis now as it was, back then. So, yeah, I think Leclerc will be ahead of Hamilton. Viva Visual asks, so you think they're bringing Lewis Hamilton to push him? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is a good benchmark, of course, to have for any driver. I mean, I think that's why George Russell, even though this, he's still made a couple big mistakes here and there, Russell has been a lot more confident this year, than he has been, last year or the year before, because he hasn't just beaten Lewis Hamilton this year, he has been comfortably beating Lewis Hamilton this year. And that's why Russell has been, so consistently ahead, because I think he's got way more confidence in himself than he has previously. And that's from beating, such a big driver so often. And, that is bound to give you confidence. So maybe, bringing Lewis Hamilton to the team, maybe that will give Leclerc so much confidence that in the future he will be even better for it. We'll see. But personally, for Leclerc, like I said, having Hamilton as a benchmark is very good for him. K. Peters, will Lewis learn to speak Italian? I think Lewis does know some Italian, not a lot, but some. I think he'll try and learn probably the vital bits of Italian he needs to know to ask certain things, but I don't think that's going to be, that big of an issue, to be honest. FIFA Visual says or asks, do you think there is sabotaging happening like some people are saying at Mercedes? No, I don't believe it is for a second, because at the end of the day, there is no evidence of sabotage. I know some random psycho, most likely a Lewis Hamilton cult fan, sent an anonymous email to Mercedes and some other journalists accusing Mercedes of sabotaging Lewis Hamilton. But again, there's no evidence. I have seen some Hamilton fans talk about, oh, but Hamilton had too cold tyres in qualifying in Montreal, and also it was an issue yesterday. That doesn't mean that Mercedes are doing that, deliberately. That could be an issue with Lewis. Maybe Lewis is not warming the tyres up enough. Maybe he is, expecting the tyres to fire up more than they actually are. Maybe he's not driving the car correctly to what, the tyre is performing. It could easily be that rather than, Mercedes deliberately giving Lewis cold tyres to ensure that he fucks up. And like I said, there is no evidence at all that that Lewis Hamilton is being sabotaged by his team. No evidence at all. The reason Hamilton fans are complaining about that and saying sabotage is because they're not used to Lewis Hamilton being beaten so regularly by a teammate. That's why they're doing this, because for them, something must be wrong. It can't be that Lewis Hamilton has just been shit this season. It can't be that. It must obviously be because of sabotage. It cannot possibly be because George Russell has performed better than Lewis Hamilton. Can't be that. Cannot be that. It obviously is sabotage. Because, again, they are a cult. Not all Lewis Hamilton fans, but those certain Hamilton fans on Twitter that, pretend that Lewis literally can do no wrong, they are a cult. Robert Perkle says Hamilton's more concerned about image more than winning races. I don't think that's the case. Astro says, why would they do that? No motive. Exactly. I mean, Mercedes are desperate to win a race. So why would you sabotage the car of a driver that very well could win you a race? I mean, Lewis has the most race wins in history. So why would you sabotage the car of a driver that literally is the most winningest driver ever? It makes no sense. Team LH is next level. Yeah, they truly are. And they ruin it for the rest. Because there's plenty of Lewis Hamilton fans who are just fine. Who are, great people. But then there's them lot who are just psychos. Do you see Max at Mercedes, and when? Honestly, I don't know. It's still hard for me to actually imagine Max Verstappen being a Mercedes driver, because my assumption has always been that as long as Red Bull give him what he needs, which is, a good team environment that he likes and a championship winning car, then he's going to be a Red Bull. But after what's happened this year with the Horner scandal and the Adrian Newey leaving, I don't know at this point. Yeah, I think I think he's more likely to stay at Red Bull because at the end of the day, the entire team is built to his liking, and that is going to take time at Mercedes to accomplish. And as well, remember, if he does go to Mercedes, his teammate is going to be someone who is going to try and compete with Max. It's not going to be, a lapdog like Sergio Perez. So, yeah, I would still favour him staying at Red Bull. So the cars are just being pushed onto the grid. As Carlos Sainz being wheeled on by his mechanics. And of course, Carlos, the highest starting Spaniard for today. Astros is a bit like the Max fans with their Dutch Messiah. I mean, there's bad fans of every fan base. There's psychos in every fan base, unfortunately. But the worst I've seen is the Lewis Hamilton fan base. They are the most psychotic. But like I said, it doesn't mean that they're the only bad one, because there's plenty of bad fan bases or bad parts of fan bases. Astro's saying car's been pretty shit without any sabotage needed. Exactly. Right. Before we go any further, I am just going to quickly, as FIFA Visual says, except Lance. Lance doesn't have a fan. True. Yeah, before we move any further, I'm just going to post the link of the stream out one final time before we get underway. And then I think I'm going to move on to the teams for a bit of a roundup before the race. So just give me a second, guys. Come join us here to Watchalong. The 2024 Spanish Grand Prix. Lando Norris starting from pole. And there you go. So, yeah, we've got 25 minutes pretty much until lights out. So, let me hide that timer. Let's go team by team and have a look at what all the teams' chances are for today. And of course, I will go back through my predicted top 10 as well in case some of you guys missed that. So for Red Bull Racing, Max on the front row. I mean, at least if Max can just hold second and stay out of trouble, that would be good enough, because I think Max has definitely got the pace, and Red Bull have definitely got the pace to keep within a second of Norris ahead. So I don't think that's really too big of an issue if they don't get the lead on the first lap. Of course, it is a very long run down to turn one. I think it's 11 seconds of full throttle down to the first corner. So there's a good possibility that Max, can get into the lead. We saw it in 2021 where he dove down the inside of Lewis Hamilton. It's definitely possible. But the race doesn't necessarily have to be won at the first corner. Like I said, if he keeps within a second, then you can either overtake on track or get it done through the pit stop phase, maybe with an undercut if Red Bull find a clear gap. I do think, as I said earlier, I think the Red Bull and McLaren team with Norris and Verstappen, I think will try to go, even if they're starting on the soft compound tyre, at least 20 laps into the race, or maybe 22, 23 laps into the race, to make sure that they've got, say, a pit stops gap over the midfield, so that they've got, a big enough gap to drop into for clear air, so that they can, perform an undercut on fresh tyres. So I think that's about when you'll see, those drivers coming into the pits. But whether it's an undercut or an overtake on track, I think at some point Max will get the job done. We'll have to see how he does it. Sergio Perez starting in 11th place. Honestly, with Checo, I would just run him, long into the race and see what happens. I'd probably start him on the medium compound tyre. Hope that he gets past Alonso, Ocon, and Gasly, say within the first 10-15 laps, and then after that, just try and run him as long into the race. And maybe if he can, hold up a couple cars, maybe then later in the race can have a bit of a fight with whoever those cars are. Maybe a Ferrari or Piastri or someone like that, to maybe grab a couple extra points. I think that's really all they can do with Sergio Perez to maybe get him a bit of a better result. Of course, remember, Perez started this race last year, I think, from a 12th place and ended up finishing in 4th. So maybe he can do something similar today. Realistically, probably not, because his confidence is on the floor. But yeah, we'll see what he can do. But Red Bull, I think, are still not the clear favourites, but favourites nonetheless. Ferrari, I don't really see, unless they get a mega start, what they can do today to finish on the podium. Like I said, if they get a mega start and they get Leclerc up to 3rd place, brilliant. And then from then on, they'll just have to try and manage things and hold up the pack behind. But if they are behind, the only other thing I can see them doing is maybe going a bit early on the first pit stop to try and catch Mercedes unawares and maybe grab a position or two. But if that doesn't work, then 5th and 6th is really where it's going to be at for Ferrari. They just simply don't have the pace right now in Formula 1. Mercedes, 3rd and 4th on the grid. Good grid position. I think they should still be happy with that. If they've got the same pace as Red Bull and McLaren out front, then there's no reason why they can't hang on to those two and maybe be in the fight for victory as well. But one thing I'm interested to see with Mercedes is if Norris and Verstappen do decide to pit between lap 20 and 23 and are very close to each other, maybe even having a bit of a battle, I would be interested to see whether Mercedes decide to go a bit longer into the race, maybe 4 or 5 laps longer, to get fresher tyres and maybe come back at Norris and Verstappen that way. Obviously, it does depend on where Ferrari are at and whether Ferrari are, too close to them. So we'll see whether, if that does happen. But do watch out for Mercedes, because I do think they might have a trick up their sleeve on strategy, especially when it comes to the first pit stop. And maybe, like I said, they'll go a few laps longer, and that will maybe upset the balance of the Grand Prix for Norris and Verstappen out front. Also, watch out for Hamilton and Russell into turn 1. Obviously, we know Russell desperate to beat Hamilton, and Russell most of the time this season quicker than Hamilton. So if Russell has a chance of passing Hamilton at turn 1, I think absolutely he is going to try and take it. For McLaren, we'll start with Oscar Piastri. Piastri obviously starting in 9th place. Oscar just needs to try and get past the 2 Alpines as quickly as possible. And if he can get past them, say, within the first 10 laps, and he's not too far behind, Mercedes and Ferrari, then maybe Oscar can do, say, what I was saying with Mercedes. Maybe go a few laps longer to have fresher tyres and maybe get into the fight that way. Maybe try and clinch a top 5 or a top 6 finish. The car is quick enough. It's just up to Oscar Piastri to keep it on the circuit and do some good lap times and obviously manage the tyres well. So we'll see what Oscar will do and what McLaren decide to do as well with his tyre choice, whether they go for a harder compound compared to the front runners. So, yeah, we'll see what Oscar or what McLaren decide to do there with Oscar. As I'm just watching the grid walk, by the way, that's why I'm having some pauses here and there. With Lando Norris in the lead, yeah, just needs to try and obviously maintain the lead into turn one. And then when it comes to the pit stops, just try and build, obviously, a gap big enough that, Max can't do an undercut. But that is going to be difficult because Max in the Red Bull compared to Lando in the McLaren, so similar on pace. And when one team is quicker than the other, it's probably going to be in Red Bull's favour. So it's going to be difficult for Lando to do that unless Max is, having some serious tyre concerns or something like that. So yeah, Lando, if he can, again, hold the lead into turn one, just needs to give it his best. And if his best isn't good enough, then fair enough. I mean, Red Bull and Max are an incredible team. So there's no shame in losing to them in the Grand Prix today. But like I said, if Max does go for a move on track, I hope Lando is very stern in defence. Aston Martin, pace not very good. Sixth best team really here behind Alpine. Maybe Alonso can do something. We'll have to see. But I don't really see what they can do today to get into the points. They just don't have a quick enough car. They need to hope really for retirements, I think, from the top 10. And if that happens, maybe they can nick a point or two. But yeah, I'm not really high in expectation when it comes to the Aston Martin team. Racing Bulls, got no pace. Alpine just need to try and manage the gap to Alonso behind. And as long as they finish the race with both cars, they should be fine. Their car looks very quick with both drivers. And hopefully they stay out of trouble at the start as well. So yeah, Alpine look absolutely fine. They just need to make sure they don't have any big issues in the race today. And they should be okay. Williams at the very back. They've got no pace. Sauber, bit more pace with Valtteri Bottas in 12th. Maybe if there's a couple DNFs, maybe Valtteri can grab a point by the end of the race if he has a good race today. But realistically, you'd imagine Sauber will remain pointless in 2024. And Haas, no surprise, not really that quick. 13th and 16th on the grid. And yeah, Haas, no surprise that they're in those positions. They're not really that quick here. They're waiting for the next Grand Prix in Austria where they should be quite a bit quicker. And probably the quickest midfield team. But before I go back to this, here is again a reminder of my race prediction. I think Max Verstappen will win by 7 seconds from Lando Norris in second, Hamilton third, Russell fourth, Leclerc fifth, Sainz sixth, Piastri seventh, Perez eighth, and then a lap down, Gasly ninth, Ocon in 10th. So we have got about 17 minutes remaining until lights out at the Circuit de Catalonia in Montmello, which is about an hour away from Barcelona. And yeah, looking forward to getting this underway and hopefully a cracking race under the sunshine. By the way, hello to Rook in the chat. Good to see you, mate. And good to see Count Blar as well. It says, well, happy Sunday to me, Chazza in the house. Yep. Well, I said if we, had an exciting grid on our hands, that I would do a race watch along again, and thankfully we do. And just to confirm for Astro, yeah, Alex Albon is starting from the pit lane because he's changed some power unit elements. So it will be Sargent 19th on the grid, last man on the grid, and then Albon will be on starting from the pit lane. Beat for Visual says Perez, just don't crash. We can't afford any more damage. The budget is stretched, we had to fire the lunch lady. Jamie Todd says, have you watched any of the F1 Academy? What do you think of the young drivers coming through? I haven't really watched much of that. Annoyingly, some of those series are on at really like ridiculous times. Like the F1 Academy this morning was on at like 8 a.m. or something, which is, you know, a stupid time, really. But, you know, I've still tried to keep up with F2, but I've got to be honest, F2 this season has been so weird and shit. Like, the cars are just weird. The teams are performing really weirdly. Drivers are still getting screwed over by the Mechachrome engine. It's just a really weird season, and I think even what do you call it? The championship leader hasn't even won a race this season. It's just a really weird season. Let me have a look. So yeah, Paul Aron, who used to be part of the Mercedes Academy, the man from Estonia, is leading the championship by 9 points from Isaac Hadjar, who has won 2 feature races. But Aron has not won a race at all. He's just had lots of podiums. So yeah, it's Aron first, Hadjar second, Maloney third, Crawford fourth, Bortoletto fifth. Of course, Bortoletto was the Formula 3 champion last year. Hauger sixth, Colapinto seventh, Miney eighth. Antonelli has now dropped to ninth in the championship. Antonelli, though, doing a good job because that Prema car is absolute wank. And then Oliver Behrman, who is on the grid next season and everyone agrees is good enough, is 16th in the championship. Just shows you how bad that Prema car is. And then you got Victor Martins, 14th. Did at least win the sprint race yesterday, but it's been such a weird season, honestly. Because all the teams that are normally teams that like would finish 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe last year, are now suddenly winning. Yeah, Rodin have had a couple race wins. Dams won the feature race today with Jack Crawford. ART have had a couple wins as of late, which is good to see. And then, yeah, Van Amersfoort have won a race. MP Motorsport have got a couple wins. PHM Racing won the sprint race in Monaco with Taylor Barnard somehow. No idea how. Campos have a couple wins. So yeah, it's just a really weird season. Really hard to tell who is actually performing well as a driver because it's just all over the place. But Astro says, I reckon every team will score points this year, Sauber included. There'll be one race where chaos happens and they manage to squeak in with a lot of others DNFing. Yeah, they will. I mean, they're good enough to grab a point somewhere when, you know, there's enough chaos. But we'll see when that is with Sauber, who desperately need to improve for the second half of the season. And thankfully, we'll have, for the second half of the season, the most wind tunnel time allowed of any team. So that should help. But we have got how many more? About just over 10 minutes to go until the Spanish Grand Prix. Keep voting, by the way, in that poll at the top of the chat. Still another few more minutes. I'll leave that poll open. And then I'll see what the results are soon enough. Ken Waller, how's the weather at the track? Very nice. Some clouds about, but mostly sunny, which is a lot better than it was forecast coming into today. So, yeah, it's going to be a dry race. Maybe not as hot as it could have been for a Spanish Grand Prix in the latter part of June, but still hot enough. And definitely quite a bit hotter than qualifying yesterday, which, you never know, may make a difference. V for Visual says Logan is worse than Lance in my opinion. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't have a good opinion of Lance Stroll, but I wouldn't say he's that bad than a guy who gets beat by his teammate every week, no matter what. Racing balls just off the pace or driving quality? No, just off the pace. Really bad pace. They've brought some upgrades here, but they haven't worked yet. So maybe they just need a couple more races to get the best out of them. We will see. Hopefully they don't drop back that much because they've been really a breath of fresh air. Have that team, and obviously Yuki Tsunoda has been brilliant this season. Tsunoda still top 10 in the championship. Also, funny thing with F2 is Oliver Behrman is higher currently in the F1 championship than he is in the F2 championship. In the F1 championship, Behrman is 12th. In the F2, he is 16th. So make of that what you will. Lance has small flashes of being good. Logan never does. Exactly. Logan, maybe you could say that qualifying session in Vegas last year was probably the only time I can remember Logan looking good. Beat for visual saying I find Danica Patrick attractive. Random. I mean, maybe do looks wise, but God, she is insufferable as a person. Literally makes me want to turn my TV off like immediately. Makes me want to throw my TV out the window. She is just, yeah, insufferable. And she's also a fucking weirdo. She's one of them conspiracy theory lot that believes in fucking shapeshifters. Because I saw a clip trending on Twitter. I think was it from yesterday of her doing some video with some like weird conspiracy theorist person about shape-shifting lizards. We've all heard those conspiracy theories before, but yeah, she apparently believes in them. So yeah, absolute weirdo is that girl. But I think what I'll do quickly is finish up that poll in the chat. Because there is a clear winner that I agree with. Brabham saying the people who I found attractive over the years is embarrassing. Yeah, let's just wait for these results to pop up in the chat. And then we'll just quickly go through them. There you go. So, 172 votes, and I asked who will win the Spanish Grand Prix of 2024. 44% of you went for, not Lewis Hamilton, but Max Verstappen. 23% went for Lando Norris, 18% for Lewis Hamilton, and other, which is anyone else, got 13% of the vote. So there you go. And I do agree. I think Max Verstappen will win the race today. I don't think it's as clear cut as Verstappen being definitely the clear favourite, but we will see. Astro saying Danica Patrick on the tinfoil hat set. That's sad. Yuck. Didn't know that. Yeah, well, you know, some people out there are just absolutely batshit insane. So leave them to it. But it is surprising that, you know, these things are out there and Sky surely know that, but have her on anyway. So, yeah, a bit weird. But I think what I'm going to do is read out just a couple more comments. And then we will get to this Grand Prix. So if you want to post any final comments for me to read out, then I will do so quick. Visual says, I think Oscar will redeem himself. He'll have a good race. Hopefully he does. It's a bit of a shame in Canada because, I mean, Lando was clearly superior to him in Canada, but Oscar was also having a really good race. And then second half of that Canadian Grand Prix just dropped off a bit, did Oscar, which was a shame. Because I thought he performed really well, like Lando did as well. And Brabham saying, hey, the crazy one's the best in bed. Okay, I'll see myself out. And Nib saying, are we speaking bad about our Galactic Federation leader? Indeed, we are. But anyway, we'll leave all that lizard talk for another time. Let's get into a couple final things before the start of the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's go through some stats first. Red Bull and Max Verstappen have won the last two Spanish Grand Prix in quite dominant style as well. Of course, one thing that did help in the 2022 edition is Leclerc retiring from the lead. Red Bull have won only 3 times in Spain since 2015. And one of those 3 times, of course, was Max's first ever F1 win, which was here in Catalonia in May 2016, 8 years ago. Incredible it was that long ago. For Ferrari, from the third row of the grid, not a great record here in Spain. Their last win in Spain was in 2013 with Fernando Alonso, 11 years ago. And they've only won once in Spain in the last 15 years, since 2009. Ferrari, though, are looking for their third win of 2024. Of course, one in Melbourne and Monaco. For Mercedes, their last race win in Spain was in 2021, of course, with Lewis Hamilton, one of his last few Formula One victories. Mercedes do have a great record here in Spain. They have won 6 times in Spain since 2015. Mercedes, though, their last F1 win a year and a half ago in Brazil in 2022. And for McLaren, their last win in Spain was 19 years ago with Kimi Raikkonen, who won by a whopping 35 seconds that day from the eventual championship winner, Fernando Alonso. And that day, the Grand Prix took place, was the 8th of May, 2005, the exact day that 2025 Haas driver Oliver Bearman was born. That's how long ago it was. McLaren have only won twice in Spain since the year 2000. They won in the year 2000 and in 2005. And McLaren and Lando Norris looking for their second win of 2024. Of course, Lando winning in Miami. Let's go through the championship standings quickly before we get on to the race. Max, of course, leading by 56 points from Leclerc in second, Norris in third. Norris could maybe get his championship bid going today if he has a good race win. Carlos Sainz in fourth, Perez fifth, Piastri sixth, Russell seventh, Hamilton eighth, Alonso ninth, and Tsunoda in 10th. And then the constructors, you've got Red Bull, 49 points clear of Ferrari. Not quite comfortable yet in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren in third, 40 points behind Ferrari. Mercedes in fourth. Aston Martin fifth. Racing Bulls in sixth. Haas seventh. Alpine eighth. And have got a big chance to get up to seventh in today's race. Williams in ninth. And Sauber in P10. But now, let's go through your starting grid for the Spanish Grand Prix. On the front row, good friends Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. On the second row, all Mercedes second row, Lewis Hamilton for the first time in a while, out-qualifying George Russell. On the third row, all Ferrari third row, Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz. And then in all Alpine fourth row, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, their best qualifying in quite a while. And then completing the top 10, Oscar Piastri and two-time winner at this track, Fernando Alonso. And then, oh no, bit too far ahead. In 11th and 12th on the 6th row of the grid, the battle of the number 2s, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. And then you've got Nico Hülkenberg and Lance Stroll, of course, used to be teammates briefly at Aston Martin and Racing Point. 15th and 16th, Zhou Guanyu and Kevin Magnussen. The penultimate rows, the two racing bulls of Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. And then Logan Sargent will line up for last on the grid, with Alex Albon starting from the pit lane. So there you go. As the formation lap has literally just begun. And I've got the tyres up there on the left-hand side, but not all of them are correct, because we've got, I think, quite a few drivers on the soft compound tyre, as Rook is saying on the chat. Everyone on softs except for Albon, who's on the mediums. Right. Thank you for saying that. I'll quickly correct that. But yeah, it will be a 66-lap race and at least 2 stops, we think, for this Grand Prix. And hopefully no shenanigans at the first corner, because we've had it here before. We've had some big crashes here before at the first corner, with multiple cars wiped out. So let me just quickly do this. As Lando Norris is just entering the back straight before turn 10, I think it is, which is the end of the middle sector. So there you go. F1 soft tyre. And quick reminder, before we get going, if you haven't yet, make sure to smash that like button. Of course, does help with the visibility of the channel and helps me know that you guys actually enjoy the content here. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so, as Lando Norris on this formation lap just coming through the final corner. And now we'll do his birdouts ahead of the start. And McLaren, just trying to remember this season, they've had some decent starts this season. Red Bull normally not as good off the line. So I am decently confident, let's say, that Lando will maintain the lead into the first corner, but you just never know. I mean, we saw here in 2011, Fernando Alonso started 4th on the grid, and he was first by the first corner. As last few cars coming through the final corner, about half or most of the grid now lined up. As we're just waiting for, I think, Zhou, Magnussen, 2 racing bulls, and Sargent to line up for this 66-lap race. And yeah, pretty much everyone now lined up. Can McLaren, in a proper head-to-head fight, beat Red Bull? Let's find out as the lights are on. It's 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go in Spain. And Lando Norris has had a pretty good start, but so has Max Verstappen, who keeps to the inside and goes on the grass briefly. But Max, I think, has got the inside line. Russell's had an amazing start and is going round the outside. What a start by George Russell. He's gone from 4th to 1st. What a start by the Mercedes driver. I don't know where Lewis Hamilton has disappeared to, but what a start by Russell. That was incredible. Round the outside of both Norris and Verstappen. Mercedes lead in Spain. So it's Russell, Verstappen, Norris and Hamilton, your top 4. As Piastri there a bit close with an Alpine. And that was just incredible stuff. Incredible driving for Russell. Clean round the outside at the first corner. Side by side there, I think Magnussen and Zhou going up to turn 9 as Russell comfortable into turn 10. But it's Russell leading from Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, and then Leclerc, Sainz, Gasly, Piastri. As Stroll there trying to dive bomb Valtteri Bottas, which he has done, I think, successfully. Yes, he has. But Piastri up to 8th, Ocon 9th, Hulkenberg 10th, Perez 11th, Alonso 12th, and then Stroll now in 13th on lap 2, as Russell only half a second clear of Verstappen as they go through turn 1. What an incredible start. I cannot wait to see the replay of that, as that is Ricciardo repassing Logan Sargent, clearly lost position to him. Yes, Stroll 13th, and then Bottas, Sonoda, Magnussen, Joe, Ricciardo, Sargent, and Albon. Everyone on the soft tyre except for Albon at the very back. Wow. And, you know, sometimes we've criticised George Russell, but that right there, that's what he's capable of. He is undoubtedly a very talented racing driver. And when he's at his best, he is incredible. Remember, Formula 2 champion of 2018. And remember, of course, Russell and Verstappen had a brilliant battle here 2 years ago. If it's anything like that, we're in for a cracker here in Spain. As Max still close, as of course DRS is now enabled, as it's now lap 3 of 66. And Russell leading down the pit straight. Verstappen, though, closing. Russell defends to the inside. Will Verstappen go round the outside? He will try. And brilliant move by Max Verstappen, who takes the lead on the beginning of lap 3. Brilliant confidence from Max to take the lead. And surely, given how he kept up with Russell in the first couple laps, he will run off into the distance, as Carlos Sainz has overtook Charles Leclerc for 5th. So the Spaniard up into P5. So, yeah, there you go. What a start to this Grand Prix. As the two Ferraris, I've got to say, dropping back already compared to the front 4. Sainz in 5th, already 1.5 seconds behind Hamilton in 4th. Hamilton about 2nd behind Norris. And Norris about 0.8 behind Russell. Russell already over a second behind Verstappen. That Red Bull looks very, very good to be able to build already a second lead. And, well, it's going to be ending up over a second quicker on this lap. And yet, new fastest lap, a 1:19.3 for Max Verstappen, which will be probably 1.5 seconds quicker than Russell went on that lap. As Pierre Gasly, I've got to say, in the background, hanging on to the Ferraris quite well. As Leclerc, I think, complaining there about Carlos Sainz possibly maybe chopping across Leclerc. And yeah, Gasly looks closer to Leclerc than Leclerc is to his teammates. So Alpine looking good here. And as we said, through the corners, the Alpine was just as good, if not better, than the Ferrari yesterday. So maybe Gasly can fight with Ferrari today. As we're looking at Norris and Hamilton with DRS trying to hunt down Russell, as Verstappen still over a second clear, which is crucial for him. As the two Ferraris going through turn 13. Sainz saying on the radio, he touched me, we collided, and he pushed me off. He touched my rear right, so I was clearly ahead. So maybe Sainz was let through by Charles. I'm not sure. But at the moment, Sainz is 5th, Leclerc is 6th. That is the facts. As we're just looking through the field, Sergio Perez there being closed on by Fernando Alonso, but I don't know if Alonso went for a move or anything. Don't think he did. As Norris only just ahead of Hamilton there, looking pretty feisty. And here is a replay of the start. And let's watch out for George Russell. So gets a better start than Hamilton. Hamilton, quite a poor start, I've got to be honest. Was lucky. Hamilton actually got passed by both Ferraris into turn 1. But then Russell got the slipstream with both Max and Lando, who were watching each other. And then just went for the outside line, sailed around the outside, mugged the pair of them off, and took the lead. Absolutely expertly done by Russell. But yeah, Max did go onto the grass, but he wasn't pushed onto the grass. I mean, he says on the radio, "I got pushed onto the grass," but I don't think he did, really. I think it was more a case he put his car there. But yeah, Russell, brilliant start. And then just tucks into the slipstream, grabs it from both Max and Lando, and just mugs them off. Brilliant. And it's a shame that Russell can't compete with Max in this race because the Red Bull car is looking so quick. Because that was Alonso-esque from 2011. Not quite as good as Alonso in 2011, but still was pretty good. As there is a replay of Alonso at the first corner, getting oversteer and having to take to the escape road. That's why Alonso didn't have a great start, dropped down to 12th place. And here's a replay of how Verstappen passed Russell. Brilliant move around the outside, had the momentum and the speed, the confidence, and he got the job done. And here is a replay of Sainz and Leclerc. And yeah, so Sainz, I think, let's see a replay. So Leclerc defended to the inside, Sainz went round the outside, and Leclerc very minimally made contact with Carlos, and then Carlos went off the track. I would say Carlos should keep that position. Because, I mean, Carlos, he was ahead. To be honest. As on lap 7, Max is about 1.5 seconds clear of Russell, who has got Lando Norris only 0.6 of a second behind him, and Lewis Hamilton only 0.7 of a second behind Lando. Three-way fight for second, third, fourth. Two Ferraris still not doing that great, and Gasly still just about hanging on to the back of them. Piastri in 8th, struggling. 2.5 behind Gasly. Perez also struggling, can't get within a second of Hulkenberg. As Magnussen is up to 15th. And Tsunoda has dropped down to 17th now. So Tsunoda not having a great day so far. And yeah, we can see Tsunoda and Zhou quite close going through turn 5. As Alex Albon is actually ahead of Logan Sargent. So Albon doing pretty well on those mediums, which will be important information for the others. Because obviously Albon started from the pit lane. Here's a replay of Bottas, and Bottas has overtaken Fernando Alonso, I believe. And yep, Alonso has dropped from 12th behind his teammate and Valtteri Bottas, now down to 14th place. I don't know if Alonso's got some damage or something, but that is very poor. As we now move on to lap 8 of 66. Max Verstappen is almost 2 seconds clear of Russell in second. Russell still has Norris behind him, but Norris almost a second behind now. So Russell doing well and almost has over a second's gap, which he needs to break that DRS. Pierre Gasly, by the way, has dropped over a second and a half behind the Ferrari, so he's starting to drop off down Piastri. Now within a second of him, so Piastri will probably pass him soon. But the two Ferraris still running line astern, and Ferrari actually closing in on Hamilton and Norris and Russell. So it's becoming a 5-way fight for second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Might become a 6-way. Piastri gets past Gasly as we're on lap 9 of 66. And still a bit away from pit stops, probably another 5 laps at least. And for the top teams, they'll probably want to go another 10 laps, ideally. As we're on board with Leclerc, struggling in the dirty air of his teammate. But yeah, going better now for Ferrari. Not sure if That's because Lando is suffering with tyre wear, as Lando has now dropped over a second behind, as Alonso has now got Kevin Magnussen all over the back of him. Alonso has got to have damage to his car because he's struggling and he's dropping through the field like a stone. So I think Alonso has got, it must have been hit at the start and clearly got some floor damage or something. What a shame for Alonso. Hasn't even been on the podium here in Spain since he won here in 2013. Hasn't even finished in the top 5 of a Spanish Grand Prix since then. When I attended this Grand Prix 10 years ago, Alonso, I remember, finished in, I think, 6th place it was. As we're now on lap 10. And Alonso just about running within a second of Bottas as Piastri trying to pass Gasly, who moves to the middle of the track, but Gasly does not give way as Zhou and Tsunoda have already pitted. That is super early for a pit stop, but they've gone for it. So Tsunoda is now last with Zhou in 19th, and I assume they've both gone for a set of mediums because Albon is doing decently well on his mediums, and yes, they have. They've both gone for a set of mediums, so let me just update that quickly. And Albon also on the medium. As Verstappen 2.5 seconds clear of Russell. So Verstappen, if he keeps this up, he's going to build a comfortable lead and going to be under no threat in this race, which is a shame. But Lando Norris dropped Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton now over a second behind. And Norris now about half a second behind Russell. As Hamilton now coming under pressure from Carlos Sainz, who was only 0.2 of a second away from Hamilton at the end of the pit straight. So Hamilton's starting to struggle and Ferrari's starting to come into their own as Kevin Magnussen has now pitted. So Magnussen should drop to 18th place, I would imagine. And goes for a set of mediums. Not a great pit stop. And we'll see. And actually, no, he's lost position there. So Magnussen down to actually last place because Tsunoda has even come out ahead. So let me update that. So 4 of the bottom 5 are on medium compound tyres. As the front runners still are not going to be pitting. Like I said, it's way too early to be pitting if you're a front runner. As Lando still within a second of Russell, but nowhere near close enough to actually overtake. As here's a replay of Fernando Alonso on lap 12. And him touching the gravel on the exit of turn, I think, 13 behind Valtteri Bottas there. And yeah, clearly Alonso's got damage to his car and he is trying to push as hard as he can to compensate and not getting anything for it. As Sergio Perez is ahead now of Nico Hülkenberg. So Perez now 10th and 3.5 seconds behind Ocon in 9th. As Magnussen has passed Tsunoda and Bottas has pitted and come out on the soft tyre in 18th as Tsunoda has repassed Magnussen. And now Magnussen has repassed Tsunoda. So Bottas now on the soft. Let me just update that. There you go. As we're on lap 13, and Max Verstappen is nearly 3 seconds clear of Russell, and Max pulling away by what? Yeah, about quarter of a second per lap, which is all he needs. If he keeps doing that until lap 20, he'll have a what, 4 to 5 second lead, which is ideally what he needs to be comfortable from an undercut, as Nico Hülkenberg is now pitted. Hülkenberg having a good race, was running in the points for about 11 laps, which is more than he was expecting today. Here's a replay of Verstappen having a massive tank slapper on the exit of turn 7. Getting way too aggressive. Doesn't want to be doing that. That will hurt his tyres if he does that too much. But he's over 3 seconds clear now of Russell, so it hasn't affected him too much as Hülkenberg comes out in 16th place. As front runners still staying out there. Max beginning lap 14, now 3.3 seconds clear of Russell. He was 0.6 of a second quicker than Russell on that lap. And Max is... I'm just trying to see where he is compared to Gasly in 7th. He is... As Ocon now pits, that's good. And Perez now pits, that's good for the front runners. Creates a bit of space. Max is only about 10 seconds ahead of Gasly. But now Ocon and Perez have pitted. Now Stroll is up to 9th. And Stroll is about a pit stop behind Verstappen. And there's about an 11-second gap between Piastri and Stroll. So there is now a gap for Verstappen if he wants to pit, but there's no need to because he's comfortably in the lead and he just needs to pit a lap or so later, other than the others. But that gap for the front runners, give it another 3-4 laps, and I reckon there'll be a gap there for Norris and Russell and Hamilton and the Ferraris to come in and pit. As Perez, after his pit stop, has come out in 15th on the soft tyre. Ocon is 14th on the medium. As we are now on lap 15 of 66 with 50 laps to go. As Pierre Gasly pits, great news if you are an Oscar Piastri fan, because he was stuck behind for a while. Gasly, good stint though. He wasn't that far behind the Ferraris, and that might force Ferrari to pit soon. Well, that won't, because Alpine just had a shocker of a pit stop. 6.7 seconds, so maybe not. If they had had a good pit stop, though, that would have forced Ferrari probably to pit in the next couple laps, as Gasly now comes out behind his teammate. What a disaster, as Magnussen gets a penalty, presumably for existing within our space-time continuum. And note, it's for a false start. So Stroll is 8th, Alonso 9th, Ricciardo 10th, Albon 11th, Ocon 12th. And then Logan Sargent has just pitted, so let me just put him down the order. So Ocon 12th, Gasly 13th, Perez 14th, and then Hülkenberg, Bottas, Zhou, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Sargent, as George Russell locks up heavily coming into the pits for his first pit stop. And what tyres will it be? It will be a set of mediums for George Russell. Slow rear right. That's exactly what McLaren need. Where will he come out? Hopefully for McLaren, it's in a bit of traffic. As he comes out side by side there with Carlos Sainz, who also pitted, but he's just about ahead of the Spaniard. Sainz, though, will get a slipstream down to the first corner, but no way you can go for a move because it's just too narrow. So it's Norris second now, Hamilton third, Leclerc fourth, Piastri fifth, and then it's Stroll sixth, Alonso seventh, Russell eighth, Sainz ninth. And, well, if I'm McLaren, because of that slow pit stop, I'll be telling Lando, smash in a qualifying lap right now and let's get in the pits and get past this guy. As Ocon and Gasly have both passed Albon, who hasn't pitted yet and, of course, is still on the mediums. But, yeah, Russell and Sainz now are on the medium tyre as Lewis Hamilton pits. Let me just correct some of the other tyres through the order. As Lewis Hamilton, better pit stop, 2.3 seconds. And he's on a set of mediums. Let's see where he comes out. And it is behind George Russell and Carlos Sainz. I thought Sainz was passing Russell there, but it was actually passing the Aston Martin. Similar kind of colour there. So it is now Leclerc third. Leclerc hasn't pitted. Piastri fourth. Piastri hasn't pitted. Stroll fifth. Stroll was not pitted. And then Russell sixth. Sainz seventh. Alonso in eighth. Hamilton ninth. As Gasly has passed Ocon. So Gasly is back to where he should be. As Ricciardo has pitted and come out in 19th. As Lewis Hamilton has just overtaken Alonso into turn 7. So Ricciardo now 19th after his pit stop. As Russell now passes Stroll into turn 10. As Max Verstappen now pits on lap 18. Sorry that I forgot to tick it over to 17. Sorry about that. But there is a lot going on. But Max Verstappen, 1.9 second pit stop. Absolutely perfect. And he comes out in completely clear air. Medium compound tyre. Quite a few seconds ahead of Russell. So it is now Norris leading. Leclerc second. Piastri third. Verstappen in fourth. As Hamilton right on the tail of Carlos Sainz here. Of course, Hamilton on, I think, 1 lap fresher tyres. He's going to go for the outside line around the outside of turn 3. But Sainz blocks him off. And Sainz really struggling here. Don't know why, but Hamilton appears to have a lot more grip. But interesting to see what McLaren are doing, because obviously they've missed the boat to get Lando in and do an overcut on Russell. But are they going to try and go a bit longer into this race to help them maybe against Verstappen? Who knows? As Lance Stroll has pitted. And Stroll has gone all the way down from 6th to 17th place. So Stroll all the way down as we're on lap 19 now. And Norris has stayed out. And so has Leclerc. So they're going different. As Lewis Hamilton within a second of Sainz as they come down the pit straight. And Hamilton, I think he's going to be close enough to at least force Carlos to defend. And he is. Hamilton going to shoot for the inside. And Carlos Sainz goes for the outside. They bang wheels. Brilliant racing. And Lewis Hamilton takes the outside. And is in to, I think, what is a net 3rd place at this point. Brilliant racing between Hamilton and Sainz. Don't know how they didn't crash. But they got through just about okay. And yeah, it was on the very edge of there being a crash. And yeah, banging wheels on the exit of turn 1. And Hamilton swooping around the outside of turn 2. Great stuff. And Hamilton clearly is on the soft compound tyre, like Carlos Sainz. Don't know if Fernando Alonso is still out there on his soft tyres. That is a replay of George Russell's failed pit stop. And then a replay of the Ferrari pit stop as well, as Lando Norris stays out as Lewis Hamilton does the fastest lap of 1:19.3. As we're on lap 20 now of 66. And I did say, ideally, the leaders would want to be going this far in, but some of them have gone early. Will that favour Lando, Leclerc, and Oscar later? We'll have to find out. It's going to make things very interesting as Fernando Alonso has pitted. Gone a bit longer into the race. Maybe that will help him with whatever floor damage he has. As that is Lance Stroll, his teammate, passing Magnussen into turn 1. So Alonso is 16th now, and Stroll is in 14th. Zhou is actually in 13th. So it's Gasly 8th, Ocon 9th, Perez 10th, Hulkenberg 11th, Bottas 12th, Zhou 13th, Stroll 14th, Magnussen 15th, Alonso 16th, and then Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Sargent, and Albon as we're on lap 21. And Lando Norris still has not pitted. Lando is currently how far clear of his teammate? He's I think he's about 14 to 15 seconds clear of Max. So even though he's stayed out longer, he's actually doing a decent job because, you know, if he pits now, he'll come out obviously clearly behind Max, but he'll be, he'll only be 8 or 9 seconds behind on much fresher tyres. So that's what they're trying to do. And of course, they're looking good compared to Russell as Piastri really holding up Max here, going into turn 7, which will help Lando, but not for longer, or much longer, as Max Verstappen passes Piastri into turn 7. So Verstappen up to 3rd. Piastri did his best to help his teammate, and he did a bit. But let me just correct that Valtteri Bottas and Alex Albon are the only 2 drivers outside the top 10 to be on the soft compound tyre. As Lando, is this Lando Norris? No, it is Oscar Piastri on lap 22. Has pitted. And he goes for a set of mediums. Good pit stop. 2 point something seconds. Oh no, 3 seconds. He will, though, come out behind the 2 Alpines, Perez, and probably Hulkenberg as well. He comes down, and yeah, Hulkenberg will be ahead of him. So he has dropped quite a few positions, but he's got much fresher tyres now as Oscar. So Oscar is now in 11th place. So let me just do some tyre corrections here. So the front 2, Norris and Leclerc haven't pitted yet. They're still on the soft tyre. And then everyone else in the top 10, except Perez, is on the medium, as we're now on lap 23 and Lando still has not pitted. So clearly going for a different strategy at this point because, I mean, he's lost position to Hamilton and to Sainz. But there is a nice gap of about 8 seconds between Sainz and Gasly that Lando will probably drop into. But Lando currently about 12.5 seconds clear of Verstappen. So I think Lando probably should pit, say, lap 24, lap 25. I think that'd be good enough. So that's a replay of Piastri passing Hulkenberg into turn 10. So we're on lap 23, and here is Alonso passing Magnussen for 15th. So if Alonso's got a broken floor, then this fresher tyres will help him a bit, but, you know, not massively. As Hamilton and Sainz reviewed, but no further investigation, as Lando is going to pit now. He was getting near the point of having to pit anyway, and he's going to go for it now. What will Leclerc do? I think Leclerc may as well stay out. And I think Leclerc has, yes, he has stayed out. So Leclerc now in the lead. As for Norris, wow, very quick pit stop. 2.5 seconds for a set of mediums on lap 24. So they've gone nearly 10 laps longer than the two Mercedes and Carlos Sainz that he now comes up behind. But Lando is now going to be so quick on those tyres. So Leclerc still hasn't pitted and is on the soft. Leclerc may as well just stay out another couple laps until basically Max comes up to the back of him and then go for a set of mediums. And then he'll probably, Leclerc, come out probably behind Gasly, probably in between Gasly and Ocon. And Gasly should be easy to overtake because the Alpine is shit slow in a straight line. As I've seen Ricciardo has overtaken Tsunoda up to 17th in that little battle down there. As Leclerc, will he pit? Yes, he will. So Leclerc, the longest to go, and that's good for Ferrari that they went that long. That'll possibly help them later. As we are now on lap 25, and Max Verstappen is back into the lead as Leclerc comes out on a set of mediums. So it will be Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, Norris, and then Gasly 6th, and Leclerc, yeah, that's why they pitted him, to come out in between Gasly and Ocon. So Leclerc now 7th in between those two. So we will see how going longer for Norris and Leclerc, how that will help their race. Maybe going that bit longer will help them maybe go for a soft compound tyre for the final stint if they pit again. As Carlos saying, or being told no further investigation for the Hamilton incident, clearly not happy. But there was nothing wrong with it. It was just hard racing. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But Max Verstappen, 5.5 seconds clear of Russell. And then Hamilton, 2.5 behind Russell. Sainz, couple seconds behind Hamilton. And Norris is now within a second of Carlos Sainz and probably will be overtaking soon. And then Gasly, about 8 seconds behind Lando. Got to say, though, Alpine, I'm very impressed with this race pace. It's a lot better than I expected. I thought they'd be miles off the front four teams. But they're slow. Yeah, they're slower, but they're only probably 0.2, 0.3 of a second slower than Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren per lap, which is pretty good. And I mean, Sergio Perez behind can't even really get close to them. As we're now looking at Norris and Sainz, the ex-teammates, as Zhou Guanyu is now up to 12th place. Here's a replay of Alex Albon, who I think is now 19th, as his teammate led him through, as we're just seeing that replay. So Albon, 19th. And then Zhou in 12th on the medium and Bottas on the soft. As Lance Stroll has now overtaken Valtteri Bottas, so Bottas really starting to suffer on those tyres, and so is Carlos Sainz compared to Lando Norris, as Norris tucked right up behind, and surely into turn 1. Norris on lap 27 is going to pass Carlos Sainz. Sainz doesn't even defend. And Lando Norris is up to 4th. And I've got to say, with, George Russell is only 3 seconds ahead of Lando as Leclerc now passes Gasly. Yeah, Lando's only 3.2 seconds away from Russell with how much fresher tyres he has, and Lando's done the fastest lap. I think Lando is now the clear favourite to finish in second place, having gone longer there. So, Norris up to 4th, Leclerc up to 6th. Leclerc has got quite a bit more work to do than Lando has. But yeah, Bottas now in 15th place. Bottas is going to have to pit soon because he's really starting to struggle on his soft tyres. Of course, Bottas pitted quite early. I think about 15, 16 laps ago. That's when on lap 28. And here is Piastri right all over the back of Sergio Perez. Of course, Piastri on not just a better compound for the race, but fresher tyres. And Perez, meanwhile, trying to catch Ocon right ahead of him. He's only a second ahead. As Piastri opens the DRS and should easily pass Perez, and he does. So Oscar Piastri is up to 9th place on the mediums. And I'm not sure going to another set of soft tyres was the best idea there for Red Bull with Perez, because it means he's just not catching the Alpines ahead as quickly as he probably should be. As Yuki Tsunoda has pitted. And yeah, just a replay. They're just showing a Piastri passing Perez. It was a simple overtake into turn 1. And yes, Tsunoda, now the hard tyre in 20th place. They've got to try something of Racing Bulls, because they're absolutely nowhere. As Lando Norris now just 1 second behind Lewis Hamilton, so soon enough, we're going to see the two mega Brits in combat. As Piastri right behind Ocon, so Piastri will be passing Ocon very soon. But yeah, let me just update that Tsunoda is on the hard, and obviously Albon on the soft. And yeah, Piastri has just overtaken Ocon. To be honest, with Piastri, I think he's just heading for 7th place. He's just too slow and too far away from everyone else, really. Which is a shame, but yeah, just a poor weekend for Piastri. Hopefully, though, next week in Austria, we'll see a bounce back. As Bottas has pitted as well and come out in 19th on a set of hard tyres as well. So maybe we'll see Bottas and Tsunoda now try to go to the end on those hard compound tyres. As Norris still just over a second behind Lewis Hamilton on lap 30. As Max Verstappen, by the way, about 7 seconds clear of Russell, so you don't have to worry. If you're a Verstappen fan, he's comfortably out front. One thing I have forgot to do, though, is update that he is on the medium compound tyre. And yeah, just a replay there. Piastri passing Ocon. As now Perez passes Ocon. So let me just update that. Perez up to, or back up to 9th place as Kevin Magnussen now pits. And he should come out in 19th place. We'll see what compound he comes out on, as Russell 1.1 clear of Hamilton. And Hamilton now has got Lando Norris only half a second behind, as Magnussen has an awful pit stop. And here comes Norris, lap 31. Gaining with DRS down the pit straight. Not sure if he's gaining enough. He is. Hamilton defends to the inside, but Norris just wasn't close enough to really go for anything. But he does a bit of a switch back through turn 1 and 2. Can he get a good run through turn 3? He does. But doesn't get enough of a slipstream to do anything into turn 3. But surely he's going to pass Hamilton in the next lap or so. As, Magnussen, now 20th, and also on the hard compound tyre. So let me just update all of that. So the bottom 3 on the hards, we'll see how they perform. And then Sargent on the medium, Albon on the soft, and Ricciardo on the medium. As Lando even closer through the final couple corners now than he was before, and surely this time around he will get it done. Very close out the final corner, and I don't think Lewis Hamilton is going to be able really to defend. And he doesn't bother defending. Lando Norris takes the inside line, and Lando Norris is up to 3rd, back where he was, and now only a second behind Russell on I think 6 or 7 lap fresher tyres. So Russell is going to be a bit of a sitting duck, as Sergio Perez has pitted. So Ocon back up to 9th. Hulkenberg will be back in the top 10. And yeah, Hamilton didn't even bother defending, and I don't blame him, because what's the point? Dirtying up your tyres when the overtake is inevitable. As here is a replay of Perez going around the outside of Ocon at turn 1. Good move, but really should have been passing Ocon a lot sooner. As Perez has come out on a set of mediums in 14th place. So let me just update that everyone now in the top 15 is on a set of medium compact tyres. As Lando just about within a second of Russell down the pit straight, but didn't have DRS, unfortunately. So he's probably going to have to wait a couple laps to overtake Russell, I think. But the thing to watch out for here, though, is, let's say he passes Russell in the next couple laps. What will he then do? Will he keep pushing and, push after Max Verstappen? Because when Lando pitted, he would have been, how far behind Max? About 10 laps ago was when he pitted, wasn't it, Lando? And he came out about, like 11 or 12 seconds behind? And currently, Lando is, about 8 seconds, 9 seconds behind? So, who knows? Maybe he'll keep pushing. But I wouldn't be surprised if McLaren told him not to, because it'll be pretty ambitious to catch Verstappen, if I'm honest, because that Red Bull and Verstappen are way too quick today, in my view. As Leclerc, by the way, still catching Sainz. He's only 2.5 seconds behind Sainz, so that's going to be a battle to look out for soon. As Valtteri Bottas has passed Logan Sargent for 17th. As here is Piastri down the inside of Gasly, and Oscar Piastri is up to 7th place. So, Bottas, obviously on the hard, Sargent on the medium, as Perez has just passed Alonso for 13th place. As we are halfway through the race, just want to say quickly, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more F1 content like this. And again, make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. It does help the channel grow, helps the visibility of the channel, and again, helps show me that you guys actually enjoy the content if indeed you do. So smash that like button if you haven't already. As we're on lap 35. And Lando Norris really closing on Russell now. Russell defends hard to the inside, but Lando again didn't quite have enough momentum. But Russell went too deep at turn 1. And Lando's going to go sail round the outside. And he does it. What a move by Lando Norris. And Russell's going to try and come back at him round the outside at turn 4. And he's done it. He's got back round the outside. But Lando, is he going to try and go back round the outside of turn 5? No, he's going to try and do the switch back and go up the inside for turn 7. Touches the grass. Brilliant racing between the two Brits. And Lando Norris is up to second place. Brilliant racing between the two as Perez is now up to 12th as he flies back through the field. And Lando now 9.5 seconds behind Verstappen. And yeah, I think realistically he's not going to catch Max Verstappen. So I think he should probably just pull away from the Mercedes and just try and manage the tyres until the next pit stop, as we're on lap 36. Another 30 laps to go in this race, which is not been as good as I hoped, but there is still 30 laps to go, so you never know what can happen. As, yeah, Logan Sargent has pitted. I'm just going to wait to see what compound he comes out on. And they're not showing what compound yet he's on. And yeah, Russell just went too deep at turn 1, and that's what gave Lando the chance to go right round the outside of turn 3. But then Russell immediately got in the slipstream, forced Lando to defend, went right round the outside of turn 4, where you can get a lot of momentum doing that. And then he did it. And Lando, brilliant driving, just very calm, did the switch back, got the much better exit. And even though he touched the grass, was very calm and just slipped that car back up the inside and got it done. Brilliant driving from Lando. And even though seemingly he was always going to struggle to win today, he's doing the best he can, which is all you can ask. As George Russell on lap 37 comes in, so Mercedes not done with Lando just yet. As Russell comes in for a set of hard compound tyres, I think that is. And Carlos Sainz comes in as well. Of course, they pitted on the same lap before. And Russell's pit stop half a second slower than Sainz's, as Sargent is now on the hard compound tyre at the back. And yet, Russell and Sainz on the hard tyres, so they definitely are going to the end. So, Sainz now 8th, and Russell in 7th. Let me just update what tyres they are on. Not him, but yeah, Russell and Sainz on the hard. We'll see how well that tyre performs for them. As Russell immediately comes out, stuck behind Gasly. As Lando Norris, by the way, really catching Verstappen. The gap was 9.5 seconds. It's now 8.1 seconds. As we're on lap 38. So Lando, he's not done. He's still pushing. As Russell here, trying to pass Gasly, but getting held up trying to do so, which is really not helping his race. And, yeah, screwing him up is this. But he will overtake Gasly down into turn 1. So Russell is back up to 6th. So, Russell 6th, Gasly 7th. Alpine just trying to go as long as they can. I think to really just do the opposite compared to Perez, to try and maybe finish ahead of Perez. As Lando continues to catch Max. I'll let you know if Lando keeps catching Max, of course. But yeah, that is something to look out for if Lando keeps pushing. As Lance Stroll has pitted, and so has Esteban Ocon. Ocon has pitted from 9th and is now 14th. And Stroll is now 17th. And they are both now on the hard tyre, which is clearly the tyre of choice. As the only man out there on a soft tyre is Alex Albon in 15th place. So, we're on lap 39. As George Russell does the fastest lap of 1:18.3. And Norris is still catching Max. Not by as much on that lap, but it was still a few tenths of a second. I think another half second. As Gasly and Hulkenberg pit. Probably for a set of hard tyres. So, Perez is up to 8th. He's passed Zhou on track. So, Perez 8th. Hold on. So, Sainz 7th. Perez 8th. Zhou 9th. Gasly has come out right ahead of Alonso in 10th, which is great for him as he's got a couple cars who haven't pitted yet in between him and Ocon. So Alonso 11th, Ricciardo 12th, Ocon 13th, Hulkenberg 14th on lap 40 of 66. And yeah, Lando still catching, another half second or so. Just needs to keep that up. And you never know, maybe Max will try to go to the end. I don't think he will because he pitted on lap 18. But if he keeps this up, then it's going to force Red Bull into making a decision that they probably didn't want to make. Maybe having to pit a bit earlier. But here is, this is Ocon trying to pass Ricciardo. As now he is going to do so on his hard tyres. As Gasly has just overtaken Zhou. And yeah, Ocon now ahead of Ricciardo. So Ocon up to 12th, Gasly up to 9th on lap 41. About 25 laps to go. Make sure as well, guys, to stick around after the race. We'll obviously, do a bit of a roundup of what's happened today. And obviously go through our driver of the day, stuff like that. So make sure to stick around for post-race discussion. As Max still losing time to Lando. Lando only 6.2 seconds behind now and was gaining even more on that lap. And I think probably lap 44, lap 45, no later than that, I think Max is going to have to come in and make a pit stop because Lando is gaining a bit too much, I think, for Red Bull's liking. As we're looking back at Ocon through the cockpit cam. Ocon, of course, out of contract and will be racing for someone else next season. But good drive today, and even better for his teammate, Pierre Gasly, who really starting to show the form of the second half of last season is Gasly. As just seeing, I think that's Lando, who's just lapped Tsunoda or something. And they're not showing the running order right now on the broadcast, so unfortunately I can't tell you if there's been any position changes. I think Stroll has just passed Bottas. I think I can visibly see that. And Lando is going to come up and lap those two. As the gap now 5.6 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. Now 5.5. That's what I mean. If he keeps pushing at this pace, he's going to have to force Red Bull into making a decision. As Russell saying on the radio, this tyre does not feel good. Already sliding. As Ocon passes, well, doesn't pass Zhou because Zhou was pitted. Alonso into the top 10 on the medium compound tyre. And Ocon is on the hard. I'll update where Zhou comes out in a second, as Zhou just has to let Bottas through. Quite a bit of traffic around for these front runners to go through, as Max is nearly... His lead has been cut down to almost 5 seconds now on lap 43. So, yeah, the next lap or so, Red Bull have got to make a decision, because if they stay out, Lando's going to catch them. And I think it'd be better if they pit about now, because if Lando then stays out, which, I mean, Lando is more likely to stay out because he went a few laps longer, then Max has got the advantage of fresher tyres, and if he pushes as hard as possible, then Max probably will catch Lando and win the race. So, Red Bull have got a very important decision to make, as Hulkenberg has just passed Ricciardo for 12th. And, yeah, Zhou is now 17th. As we're on lap 44 or 66. Car 44, currently in 3rd place. Still also has not pitted. Leclerc, by the way, in 4th. As Hamilton, saying that, does now pit. Leclerc was only 2.5 seconds behind Hamilton. And also Leclerc, another one to watch out for, because he could very well at least try to go to the end. But Lewis Hamilton definitely is not. As Piastri is up to 4th. Now Russell 5th. Hamilton 6th. No, not anymore, because Carlos Sainz has come out ahead. So Hamilton drops to P7. And this race really, maybe a bit of a slow burner, but I think is really starting to take an interesting turn now. And Hamilton, though, has actually come out on soft tyres, interestingly. Hamilton on the soft. And Alex Albon, by the way, up to 13th now. Obviously hasn't pitted. And he is also on the soft. But Albon hasn't pitted for the second time. Because it's Albon 13th. Albon has now pitted, and Max Verstappen now pits for a set of soft tyres, and they had to, because Lando was catching still so quickly on lap 45, and Max will come out, I think, in 3rd, ahead of Piastri. Yes, he will. So, what will Norris and Leclerc do? Will they stick or twist? That's what we're about to find out in this final stage of the Grand Prix, as Hamilton right on the back of Sainz here for 6th. As they go through turn 1, 2, and 3. And personally, I think Red Bull have made the right decision to pit, because if Lando doesn't pit again, then as Sainz has got a bit wide through turn 3 and Hamilton's got a really good run now, will he have a go into turn 7? He's right in the slipstream. Will he send it? No, he doesn't feel as though he can. But, and up to turn 9. No, God, Lewis is so much quicker on that soft tyre. He's having a go everywhere at the moment. As we're on lap 46 out of 66. Let me just update that. And yeah, Hamilton is going to pass Sainz probably in the next few corners. Down the pit straight, most likely. But yeah, Max is 17 seconds off the lead with 20 laps to go. So if Max catches Lando at 1 second a lap, Max will win the race, as Russell passes Piastri, who hasn't pitted for the second time, and Lewis passes Carlos. So Mercedes now 4th and 6th. So let me just update this, because Hamilton in 6th on the soft, Sainz on the hard. But yeah, and the gap now down to 16 seconds between Lando and Max, as Fernando Alonso now pits. So the two Alpines back in the top 10. But yeah, if Lando doesn't pit again and Max catches at 1 second per lap, then Max Verstappen will win the Spanish Grand Prix. But if those soft tyres on Max, if they start to degrade and that amount of time he gains per lap comes down to maybe 5, 6, or even 7/10 of a second, that might be enough for Lando to win this race, as long as his tyres don't hit the cliff, as Max Verstappen does a new fastest lap, a 1:17.8. As Alonso, by the way, comes out in 13th after his pit stop, as Albon is now 18th after he pitted, and Ricciardo is 17th after he pitted. As Piastri has pitted for McLaren, he was always going to go for a second pit stop. No real point for him to do a one-stopper. So 4th and 5th now for Mercedes. Sainz up to 6th. And Piastri has come out ahead of the two Alpines in 8th place on the soft tyres. So he might be able to catch Perez, who pitted quite a few laps ago. So, yeah. Let me just update all of this, because it's all changing round. Lando Norris pits. And I think there was a radio message a few moments ago where I think Lando said, "I'm not sure if I can get to the end on this tyre." And clearly he can't. But he has gone, 4 laps longer than Verstappen did, as Norris comes out almost side by side with George Russell and just about holds on to second place. So that's second place confirmed then for Lando. But he's 8 seconds behind Verstappen on 4 lap fresher tyres. So 18 laps to go. If Lando can catch Max by a half a second a lap on average, then he might be able to win this race. A bit of a slow pit stop there, 3.6 seconds. That could be the difference between winning this race and not, if he starts to catch Max. So, and Leclerc also pitted for soft tyres. So Verstappen now leads. Norris 2nd, Russell 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Sainz 5th, Leclerc 6th. Now lap 49. But yeah, we will see how quickly Lando can catch Max. Again, if it's half a second a lap, then it's going to be a last 2 or 3 lap of the race showdown for the win, which is precisely what we want. As now Hamilton right behind Russell. Of course, Hamilton on the soft tyre, Russell on the hard. So, let me just correct some of these tyres. Verstappen on the soft, Norris on the soft, Russell on the hard, Hamilton soft, Sainz on the hard, and Leclerc on the soft, and then Perez on the medium, Piastri on the soft, hard for Gasly, hard for Ocon. Hulkenberg, by the way, just got a penalty, but I don't know what it was for, so sorry. And then everyone else is on the hard except for Albon and Tsunoda. So, let me just update that quickly. And I'll just update that, Tsunoda is now last. I think Tsunoda has just pitted again. As we've got Ricciardo 17th, Magnussen 16th, Bottas 15th, Stroll 14th, Alonso 13th, Zhou 12th. Zhou is having a good race, I must say, as Lando Norris has a 117.3. Nearly a second quicker than Max Verstappen. If he keeps that up, he will win the Spanish Grand Prix. As we enter the final 16 laps, as Sergio Perez is pitting again. A 3-stop strategy for Perez. I thought they may have kept him out there, but no, they're going to pit him. So Piastri 7th now, Gasly up to 8th. And Perez will come out, I think, 10th. Yes, 10th, right behind Ocon's. Norris only 6.8 seconds behind, with 16 laps to go. As Max has just been told on the radio that Lando is not saving his tyres and is pushing as hard as possible. Maybe that will come back to bite Lando, we'll have to see. But yeah, Perez now 10th on the soft tyre. Perez will repass Ocon pretty quickly as the gap now down to 6.1 seconds. So still coming down enough for Lando to have a chance to win this race. And I just saw Crystal Racing saying in the chat, I think we are going to have, as Yuki Tsunoda has been given a penalty of 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane. Yeah, this is going to be another Imola-style finish, but I think we might actually get an overtake this time. As, talking of overtakes, Sergio Perez overtakes Ocon for 9th. So Perez climbs his way back up. Can Perez catch Piastri for 7th? That is the question. So, Perez on the soft, Ocon on the hard. Alpine should still score points with both cars because Hülkenberg in 11th has a penalty. As another fastest lap for Lando Norris, gap down to 5.8 seconds on lap 52. As Hamilton going for the outside on George Russell through turn 1, and he gets the move done on the better compound. Lewis Hamilton is up to 3rd. There you go. Brilliant move from Lewis, who's having, I think, definitely his best weekend of the season so far. Hopefully keeps this form up going forward. But with Lando, I'm just thinking, imagine if he was not behind Russell during the first stint and still decided to go longer than Max. Could be right on the back of Max by now. It was just that poor start. I think that maybe will come back to bite Lando by the checkered flag. Yeah, brilliant move by Hamilton, who's in fine form today. And as always, super quick at this track. He's won so many races here. And now just needs to settle down to try and finish in 3rd. As Lando, about 5.5 seconds behind Max. As Max being told we need to push to the end now, Max. As I say, Lando. Didn't quite see what the rest says. But I will say, though, in Max's favour, last couple laps, Lando has not gained as much. Still gaining probably 1/3 of a second per lap, but that is not enough. I don't think for Lando to get the job done. It needs to be a bit more than that. I don't know if there was traffic or something, but we'll see if that continues. Lando continuing to catch up that rate, as we're looking at Alonso right behind Zhou in the fight for 12th. Again, Zhou, I think, has had a pretty good race in the Sauber there. Much better than his teammate, as Bottas, his teammate, who started ahead of him, is a pit stop behind him. But here comes Fernando Alonso round the outside, down the pit straight, and Fernando Alonso is up to 12th. But awful, awful race and weekend for Aston Martin. Because Alonso is, 16 seconds away from Ocon in 10th. How bad is that? And Hulkenberg, even though he's got a penalty, he's going to still finish in 11th place. As the gap now down to 5.2 seconds. Again, another third of a second, but I don't think that's enough. If he keeps catching Lando at that rate, a third of a second per lap, then he's not going to be able to catch him in time. He's probably going to end up finishing about second behind Max. So he needs to up the rate that he's catching Max by. But maybe Max is just doing enough to keep Lando behind. Because Max definitely has upped his pace. And I think on this lap, Max has gone quicker than Lando. So Max doing enough at the moment to take his third consecutive win in Spain, which is going to be crucial really for the championship, because if Lando can somehow win this, then it would really boost a possible championship bid for him. But at the moment, Max will be about 70 points clear of second place Lando Norris, and Lando is heading for second in the championship. As talking of second in the championship, Leclerc, who's still currently there, because obviously the race is not over, has just been let through by his teammate. So Leclerc fifth. Obviously Leclerc on a much faster tyre. And Leclerc pitted quite a bit after Russell, who is in fourth. So can Leclerc catch Russell before the end? We'll find out. And if he can, then would it keep Leclerc second in the championship? I don't think it will. I think Lando, as it stands, unless Leclerc finishes third, I think Lando, with him having the fastest lap as well, Lando will go up to second in the championship. Lando, though, is not gaining anymore on Verstappen, so I think the storm has been weathered by Red Bull and Verstappen, and I think as long as they don't allow Lando to start catching them massively again, I think they might have just got this race win, Verstappen and Red Bull. And like I said, when we look back at this race, I think we may say that for Lando and McLaren, I think it's probably the start that cost them. Not just losing position to Russell, but Verstappen as well. And then obviously once Verstappen passed Russell, Lando was stuck behind Russell for 15 laps? And yeah, that could very well be the difference between winning and losing today. As we're looking at the Haas of, I think, Hulkenberg, is it? No, it's Magnussen, who has got Ricciardo right on his tail. As we're on lap 57, 10 laps to go of this Spanish Grand Prix. Lando has got the gap down now to 5 seconds. As Ricciardo, at least, is, even though I think he's had less pit stops than his teammate, he's at least beating his teammate, which is all he can do. The reason he's in 17th has nothing to do with him. It's the car. Car's been very poor this weekend. As Ricciardo tries to pass. Magnussen, though, is about to catch and probably overtake Bottas for 15th. So we're going to have a three-way fight in a moment. And Alex Albon is only a couple seconds behind on soft tyres. As Leclerc is told, if you can, we need to try and pick up the pace. Leclerc 5.5 seconds behind Russell with 10 laps to go. So really, Leclerc needs to catch by about 7 or 8 tenths of a second per lap until the end, I think, to have a proper chance at taking 4th place. But I will feel a bit... I think if I was Russell at the end of this race, I would feel a bit miffed because, you know, he was ahead of Hamilton. I wouldn't say necessarily quicker than Hamilton, but was ahead for a lot of the race. But Mercedes maybe, you know, got the tyre choice wrong, putting him on the hard. And that's what's got him behind Hamilton now. As here comes Ricciardo down the inside. Magnussen doesn't even defend. So Daniel Ricciardo 16th, and Ricciardo will have the chance to pass Bottas for 15th. So there you go. As Lando now 4.8 seconds behind, but still that is not... He's still not catching quick enough to pass Max. Because with about 8 laps to go, I mean, he'd need to start catching Max by, 7 or 8 tenths of a second per lap. And he's only catching by probably 0.2 a lap, 0.3. So as long as Max keeps pushing to keep Lando at bay, then Max has got the race win. As we're on lap 59, and Sergio Perez, I've got to say, is really not driving well. As we're looking at him now, he's in 9th place, and he's on fresh, soft tyres, and he's not really catching Gasly in 8th that quickly. So, yeah, poor, once again, performance by Perez, only heading for 2 points. And he's lucky to still be 5th in the championship. As the current driver of the day vote has Lando Norris winning it by 29%. Not sure who I would go for driver of the day. It would have to be between the front 4 drivers. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd probably say I'm probably leaning towards Verstappen, not Verstappen, purely because, you know, Max got past Lando on lap 1, even though he lost, you know, even though he got passed by Russell, Max got past Lando crucially, and then past Russell with a brilliant move. When with Lando, I mean, as all, that's Alex Albon nearly spinning and going into the, well, does go into the gravel, but nearly got parked into the gravel at turn 4. So that's Albon's race done for, really, in terms of overtaking anyone. Now Albon is now just a second or so ahead of Tsunoda in 18th. Let me just update that Tsunoda is up to 19th. But with Lando, the reason he's got into second is more, I feel, strategy related than, like, you know, he was genuinely better or quicker than Russell. I mean, you know, Norris has been brilliant, don't get me wrong. Really good pace, but I think I would just lean to Verstappen, because I think Verstappen today, the overtakes he pulled off, he pulled them off when he absolutely had to. When Lando, I think, again, his comeback through the field has been a bit more strategy related. So I'd probably go Verstappen as my driver of the day, as that's an Aston Martin getting lapped. Don't know which one. I think it's Alonso being lapped by the leaders. And he'll be the last one, I think, to be lapped, because Hulkenberg's a bit too far ahead. As we're on lap 61, so just over 5 laps to go. As Leclerc, by the way, 3.5 seconds behind Russell. So maybe on the last lap or so, Leclerc could have a go. As Ricciardo, talking about having a go, passes Bottas and gets up to 15th. And that is as far as he'll go, because he's 25 seconds now behind Stroll, is Ricciardo. But we're looking currently at the, I think, 2 Mercedes drivers. Yeah, we're now looking at Russell, who is still being caught by Leclerc. As, yeah, we're now on lap 62. So 5 laps remain. And Lando 4.3 seconds behind Max. And yeah, unless Max runs into some serious tyre trouble, then Max is going to win the Spanish Grand Prix and all but confirm that he will be the world champion of 2024, because he will stretch his legs out to a 69-point lead in the championship, ahead of Norris second, and then it'll be Leclerc third, Sainz fourth, Perez fifth, Piastri sixth, I think, ahead. Yeah, Piastri 6th, Russell 7th, Hamilton 8th, and then Alonso 9th, Tsunoda 10th is how the top 10 of the championship will be after this race. Constructors' Championship-wise, Ferrari are currently in second, and they're currently heading for 18 points. Red Bull heading for 27, so Red Bull having a good game today. McLaren heading for 24 or 25 points. So McLaren catching Ferrari today. And Mercedes, well, at least catching Ferrari today as well, as obviously they're over 100 points behind Ferrari. So they've got a lot of work to do. And most importantly, Alpine, as we're on lap 63, Alpine heading for 5 points, which would put Alpine up to 7th in the championship and only, I think, 18 points behind Racing Bulls. And about 48 points, I think, behind Aston Martin, who I think, given where Aston Martin are and Alpine are, I think Alpine can absolutely catch Aston Martin. Because there is lots of races to go. Still another, 14 races to go? And Alpine, they're only getting stronger, and Aston Martin are only getting worse. As Leclerc, only 1.7 seconds behind Russell now. So this is really the battle to look out for towards the end. Perez still catching Gasly, but he's 2 seconds behind. I think Gasly is maybe going to hang on there for 8th place. It will be close, though. Perez might just get him on the last lap. As we're on lap 64, Max 3.7 clear of Lando. And I think Leclerc, will probably take Russell before the checkered flag. That's Leclerc coming down the pit straight now, gaining on the Mercedes, only slightly in the slipstream. As they come through turn 3 now. And yeah, I'll keep you updated with Perez, whether he is actually able to pass Gasly for 8th place. As Oscar Piastri also not too far behind Carlos Sainz. He's only 4 seconds behind, obviously too late to catch him, but only Piastri didn't get stuck behind the Alpines and didn't have his, bad qualifying position. I think if Piastri had started in P7, then I think Piastri probably would have finished in 6th today. As there is Darth Toto in the garage, as we are now on the penultimate lap of the Spanish Grand Prix. Lando now 2.9 behind, still pushing, but it is too little too late for McLaren to take their first win in Spain in 19 years. As Leclerc has the gap down to 1.2 seconds. So it's going to come down to the last lap as to whether Charles Leclerc will finish in 4th place. As through turn 3. There's a bit of traffic ahead, interestingly. I think it's Alonso, or is it Alonso? Actually, I think it's Stroll, actually. And this might just be what Leclerc needs to just give something for Russell to panic about. And also will cause Russell to get a bit of dirty air. As Leclerc, still over a second behind through turn 9. Needs to get under a second behind through this final couple corners as we begin the final lap in Montmello. And yeah, Leclerc really closing in now through turn 12. But is he close enough to have a go at Russell down the pit straight? I'm not sure he is unless he unleashes absolutely everything of his battery. Here they come. And yep, he is. He's unleashing everything his battery's got, but it's not enough. And Russell keeps the position. Maybe somewhere else on the lap, Leclerc can have a go at Russell. As Leclerc still going to keep pushing, and still Russell hasn't passed Stroll yet, which will hurt Russell. And there you go. They've now passed him. As they come up to turn 7. And Leclerc has a little lock-up. And a massive wiggle as well. He's absolutely throwing the car about. As Sergio Perez goes up to 8th. Here comes Max Verstappen. A 3rd win in a row in Spain. And surely has absolutely confirmed that no one else can contend with him this year. Max Verstappen wins the Spanish Grand Prix. Lando Norris finishes 2nd, couple seconds behind. Lewis Hamilton will finish 3rd. Who will finish in 4th? It should be George Russell. It will be George Russell for 4th. Leclerc 5th. Sainz in 6th. Piastri 7th. Perez just about took 8th place from Gasly in the end. And then it'll be Gasly in 9th. Let me just update that. Gasly in 9th with Ocon 10th. And then Hülkenberg 11th. Alonso 12th. Joe 13th. Stroll 14th. Ricciardo 15th. Bottas 16th. Magnussen 17th. Albon 18th. Tsunoda 19th. And Logan Sargent last of all. All 20 cars finishing. So, there you go. The Spanish Grand Prix in the books. And wasn't as good as what we hoped, but it did have the potential. There's no doubt about that. The potential was there. It's just, it didn't quite come out the way we were hoping. But let me just get this poll going. Who is your driver of the day for the Spanish Grand Prix? And your options for driver of the day will be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and I'm going to put George Russell in there as well, because that start he did was amazing. It really was. But my driver of the day is Max Verstappen, because he produced his overtakes when he absolutely needed to. And when he did those overtakes, he was able then to run away into the lead. And that's what eventually allowed him to win the Spanish Grand Prix. And as just, I think Looney Classics just said in the chat, Lando Norris lost this race at turn 1. Not just being passed by Russell, but being passed by Max. If he had kept ahead of Max and, even lost position to Russell, then I think we get a completely different race today. But Max got Lando into turn 1, and then, Mercedes just weren't quick enough today, so it was inevitable that Red Bull were going to pass. And that's the difference at the end of the day. Not the quality of overtaking, but when the overtake was made. And that's why Max Verstappen is still your king of Formula 1 and is still the best of the best. And takes yet another win. But yeah, I'll stick around for another few minutes, and then I'll, come off. We'll have just a bit of a reaction here. But yeah, not a great race. I'll probably give it like a 6 out of 10. There were some good moments. Obviously, the start, Verstappen and Russell was good. A couple good overtakes after that. Hamilton, Sainz. But yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't what we were hoping for. But it wasn't a bad race. It just was average or slightly above average, I would say. But yeah, in terms of the teams, I'll just quickly, whiz through them. Red Bull, well done to them. They had, I think, if you look at it in terms of clear air and the same tyre life, I think Red Bull had the best car today. The reason Lando was catching at certain times was because Lando had fresher tyres. I mean, the McLaren was still very quick today, but I think, again, with the same tyre life in clear air, I think Red Bull had the edge today. But Max, like I said, the reason he's my driver of the day is because he produced the overtakes when he had to at the most important time to then run away into the lead, build a gap that Lando could not overcome. So yeah, great job by Max Verstappen. Great overtake on Russell. Just shows you just why he's so good. The confidence to do what he did on, what was it, lap 3 of 66. Perez, shit performance, but what do you expect from him? That's all we get from him at the moment. Ferrari, I think Ferrari tried their best to get a better result than 5th and 6th, which is inevitably what they were always heading for. I mean, that's what I predicted. And that's what they got. By the way, I just wanted to say, guess what, guys? The top 10, the way it finished, it's exactly how I predicted. And I think that's the first time ever that I've got the top 10 exactly right. So, it's not that hard around a track like this, I will say. But yeah, I got the top 10 exactly right. So, well done me for getting a prediction right. And exactly right as well. But yeah, Ferrari, they tried the best they could. But like I said, in the build-up to the race, they're on the back foot. And with these upgrades that aren't working, they are slipping further and further behind and need an upgrade to work soon. Because if it doesn't, Ferrari are in big trouble going forward. Mercedes, again, did the best they could. I mean, they were in 2nd and 3rd at one point, but Lando, with fresher tyres, and that McLaren is just quicker than the Mercedes right now. So, yeah, it's not a surprise that it finished that way. Again, maybe if you're Russell, you'd be a bit miffed as to why they went for hard tyres with him and soft for Lewis. But I think Mercedes probably thought that the hard for Russell would work better than it did. But it sadly did not. But yeah, still a good result. 27 points for the team. And going into the next Grand Prix in Austria, I don't see why Mercedes can't be in the fight for pole and maybe even the win. Because as we've seen, their straight line speed is good. And, their cornering has improved tremendously. So, yeah, watch out for them in the next couple Grand Prix, Austria and then Silverstone. For McLaren, yeah, Lando, as we've said, it was the start of the race that lost him the race, because once Max got past him, and then Max obviously very quickly got past Russell, Lando just couldn't get past Russell and was stuck behind him. That allowed Max to build the lead that he did, and nothing Lando really could do after that. He tried hard. He was, his pace was brilliant, but it was just the start of the race that cost him at the end of the day. But still, great result, and he is now second in the championship. Oscar Piastri 7th, best he could have done, but yeah, Piastri's been pretty poor all weekend. But yeah, 25 points for McLaren. I think as a team, probably could have done better, mainly because Piastri, I think, could have had a better weekend, but they did their best, I think. I mean, when it comes to the start of a race, you never know what's going to happen. You can't always get a good start. And Lando didn't have a bad start. It just wasn't as good as Verstappen's. And that's why Max, got alongside, got hit that position. And even though Russell went round both of them, it was inevitable that Russell was going to be beaten by Max and Lando. And then the other teams, Alpine, brilliant result. Clearly best of the rest in the midfield race. And let's see if they keep that up. If they do, then like I said, they will catch Racing Bulls and maybe even Aston Martin. So we'll keep our eyes on them. Aston Martin, poor, very poor weekend. They have got to fix up because they are in deep trouble. Haas, Nico Hülkenberg, I have to say, even though he got a 5-second penalty, I think he can be one of the drivers in the midfield that can give themselves a pat on the back. I think he really got a better result than was expected. I had Hülkenberg probably finishing, say, more like 14th or something, given that he started in 13th and he had the Aston Martin Stroll right behind him. So to finish in P11 and on track, he was only a second or so behind Ocon. That is a good performance. Very good performance by Hülkenberg. And if he keeps that up, then next week in Austria, I think he will be rewarded with a good result, because I do think Haas next weekend should be pretty competitive. Sauber, not great. Zhou, I thought, had a good race. Racing Bulls, Ricciardo did the best he could, but yeah, Racing Bulls have been awful. And Williams, awful as well. But I think what we'll do is go through a few of your comments and then finish up the poll in the chat. Crystal Racing says, when a Ferrari not in trouble? Indeed. If only they could actually improve and develop well over the course of a season. Because, I mean, if that upgrade at Imola had worked and the one they brought here had worked, Ferrari probably could have been finishing second and third today. But they just haven't got any better. Hulk 6 places ahead of his teammate too, exactly. And they both got a 5-second penalty. Looney Classic says, one more upgrade and Merck and McLaren could be a match for Red Bull. Not sure I would say that for Mercedes. I think they probably need a couple upgrades in terms of couple upgrade packages to get to that point. I think McLaren, though, I would agree. I think one more upgrade, and I think they're right there, if not quicker, than Red Bull. And apparently, they've got something coming at Silverstone, so you never know. British Grand Prix, you could have a McLaren 1-2. I mean, we saw, was it this time last year, they brought an upgrade and it transformed their entire season. So you never know. Will you watch the post-race show on the F1 channel, Chaz? No, I never watched that. I can't stand Will Buxton. Hate the guy. Francisco says Norris lost the race at the start, lost too much time in the first stint. Yeah. Do we know if there's a reason Yuki did so badly today? Well, he did an extra pit stop compared to Ricciardo, so that's why I think he finished behind. But Racing Bulls got no pace, so yeah. Sarah Gar says Aston Martin did not disappoint. Lol. It is incredible to me how that team cannot figure out how to improve a car. Like everyone else, maybe not everyone else, but mostly everyone else, gradually can improve their car over the course of a season. But Aston Martin, they may as well just take all the upgrades off like they did last year. Because ever since the development race started, 3 or 4 races in, they've just gone backwards again. Because in Bahrain, they weren't a midfield team, but they weren't proper front runners, but they weren't far away. But now they're not even top of the midfield. They're struggling even to get that. So, yeah, horrendous from them. Let's see if I can find some other good comments here. Crystal Racing says Stroll's losing to show. Todd says last pit stop really hurt Lando. I don't think it was because of that. I don't think it was because of that. I don't know the pit stop wasn't the best, but I don't think it was because of that. Again, if Lando had not lost position to Max, or if he had passed Russell in the first stint after Max had, then, there's 2 or 3 seconds there that maybe make the difference. But ultimately, Max got the job done, and Lando ended up second. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again because I think it's hard for anyone to argue against this, especially with who has finished first and second in almost all of the last few races. But Max Verstappen and Lando Norris are currently the 2 best drivers in the world, without doubt. I think it's since the Chinese Grand Prix at Shanghai, they've both finished in the top 2, except for, I think, Monaco. And for me, that's a clear enough sign that you need that they are the 2 best drivers right now in the world. And Lando is the biggest threat to Max Verstappen as a driver. Nib saying, it's insane that Aston Martin once had to be so frugal with upgrades and was so good at them that now for 2 years they've been so fucking bad with them. It's amazing, really. It is. I've not seen a team be this bad with upgrades. I've seen teams not get any better, but I've not seen teams legit get worse so often like Aston Martin do. With Ferrari, our complaint is normally that they don't get better, but they don't really get much worse. But yeah, Aston Martin just keep getting worse and worse. And you never know, another few races and they could be racing with Sauber and Williams. Technically they were today, weren't they? Because Alonso only finished 1 place ahead of Zhou. They've done a Ferrari second half of 2018, but for 2 years, says Nib. Exactly. Astro says, Lewis Chazza, still the GOAT really for me. It's just that Max has the car and no challenge from a teammate. Max does have the car, but he's still consistently, week in, week out, getting the best out of himself and the car. So that's why he is the best. Lewis has not even been one of the top 5 drivers this season. Lewis has been very poor this season. This weekend has been easily Lewis's best weekend because he's actually shown up and delivered what we expect him to do. So yeah, there's no way I can put Lewis in the top even 3 best drivers right now. The top 3 best drivers right now are Max, Lando, and Leclerc. 100%. Leclerc, last couple races, feels like he's fallen off a bit. But, you know, there's still with some performances this year where I'd say Leclerc definitely deserves to be in that top 3. But I will, though, in regards to this discussion, I will be doing a stream just after the last race before the summer break, which is in, 6 weeks from now, where we will go through driver ratings for the season, and I will go through my driver rankings and who I think's been the best so far, who I think's been the worst, you know, throughout the entire field. We'll do like a mid-season review. So, yeah. But I think, guys, I'll come to the end of the stream. Let me just finish up the poll here quick. 47 votes, driver of the day for the Spanish Grand Prix, according to you guys, with 68% of the vote is Max Verstappen, 23% goes to Lewis Hamilton, 6% to Norris, and 2% to George Russell. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming along to not just this stream, but the stream yesterday and the weekend in general. Been great to be back doing, you know, both a qualifying and race watch along for the first time again since the Australian Grand Prix, which was 3 months ago. I think almost exactly 3 months ago. So yeah, thank you guys so much for the support. Been great to do this again. Obviously, this weekend was the first weekend I've done any streaming since Monaco, which was about a month ago. Yeah, great to be back doing this. And again, confirmation, I will definitely 100%, bar any technical issues, be live next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. UK time for the qualifying watch along at the Austrian Grand Prix. So definitely doing a qualifying watch along. And then for the race, we'll see. We'll see what the grid is and we'll see how things shape up. But definitely we'll be live for qualifying at the Red Bull Ring, which I am sure is going to be incredible with how close it will be. The top 5 will probably be separated by like a 1/10 of a second or something insane like that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for this weekend. Be great to have you. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Smash a like button before you go if you haven't already. That'd be great if you could do that. As well, check out my last recorded video a few months ago, my Lance Stroll video, which did pretty well over the course of the winter, over 100,000 views. If you haven't seen that yet, make sure to check that out. Link in the description. And also link in the chat, just seen posted by my moderator, Rook, for my Discord server. If you want updates as to when I'm going to be going live, uploading videos, you know, stuff like that, then the Discord server is a great place to be to get those updates and know what I am up to. So yeah, make sure to go and join that if you want to. But guys, that has been it for the 2024 Spanish Grand Prix weekend. And until qualifying day in Austria, live next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. UK time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.